Hi guys, this is Coach Redpill speaking to you all. How you doing? If you can hear me properly, do me a favor and please raise your hand. It's the little hand button. Just press it to make sure that you all can hear me. Great, that's terrific. That is fantastic. I'm gonna put all your hands down real quick, and I want to ask you. Don't raise your hands yet. I want to ask you all. How many of you are the just the regular $5 tier who are here to check this out? One, two, three, four. Oh, several of you. Great. This is my sales pitch to you all. I hope that you will join the weekly webinar tier. And yeah, this is going to be like a typical weekly webinar. This is, in fact, a redo of webinar number 3. Now, what happened was, I think I've said this before, but just so that everybody's on the same page, I did this 2 weeks ago. Well, tomorrow it'll be 2 weeks ago exactly. Like every Sunday, I did the webinar, and for some reason, webinar number 3 just did not record. I don't know why. This software that I'm using, GoToWebinar, seems to be very, very good, very, very stable, but for some reason, it failed to record webinar number 3. And I'm sure that I must have made a mistake somehow or inadvertently turned off the recording or something like that, because that's usually the case. Usually it's the user who screwed up. So I'm sure I must have screwed it up, and so therefore I have to do it again because I'm committed to providing the content that I promise to the different tiers. And I promised the guys who are on the webinar tier that I'm going to do, the live broadcast on Sunday, and then the next day I'll put up the recording. And because a lot of guys also, because of time difference, they can't catch it live, unfortunately. And so I wasn't able to put up the recording, and so now I'm going to do it again. I am already recording this on my own software on my computer, so I am definitely going to be able to record this. But that's just a little prelude so that you understand why I'm doing this again. Okay. Now, this is a subject matter that a lot of people have asked me, which is the issue of investing. Okay, and I'm going to be talking, well, as you can see, the title of this is Investments, Opportunities, and Stupidity. Okay, these are all topics that were suggested by webinar tier supporters, because usually what I do is, like, a few days before the webinar, I put up a post and ask them to throw out any ideas. And if anybody reads an idea there that's posted in the comments saying they like it, to give it a thumbs up. And that way I know more or less what people are interested in. I mean, I have ideas that are prepared, of course, but I'm also interested in the feedback from the audience. So these are the topics that we came up with for webinar number 3 that was posted on April 12th. And so here goes. Here is the full outline of the webinar. And I'm going to march through all of these issues and discuss each of them. Now, the first one is, of course, a lot of people have asked me what are my investment strategies, or if I have any strategy or whatnot. I get this question a lot, and it's very flattering. And I'll just be very brief and to the point. I don't know anything about investing. There are a lot of very, very sophisticated investors who have all kinds of strategies that they're just beyond me. I don't have that many IQ points. I have very few, as a matter of fact. Anybody who spends any time with me will know that I'm not too smart. And so as an investor, which is what I am, I retired, in 2016, 2015, 2016. I am a retired investor, and the way I invest is I buy income streams. I'm not interested in trading. You always want to know the difference between investing and trading. Trading is when you buy something at one price and then sell it at a different price later on, hopefully at a higher price. That's the whole point of trading, right? You buy low, sell high, and you make the money you make is the difference. That's trading. I don't trade. I'm not good at trading. I usually screw it up when I trade. What I do is I buy income streams. Now, what does that mean? You see, you buy, for instance, a property, say a bit of commercial real estate, and you buy it for not much money, but it delivers a really good rent. Then that's a good income stream. See? But for instance, suppose you buy an apartment in Lower Manhattan for $3 million. And the best rent you can get for it, the absolutely very, very best rent you can get for it is $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month times times 12, that's 12 months in a year. That's $36,000, right? $36,000 a year. $36,000 a year divided by 3 million. How much is that? That's 1.2%. Is that a good investment? No, it's a lousy investment because you bought a property for $3 million and the only income that you're getting from it is a lousy 1.2% per year. 1.2% is actually less than inflation. I mean, you are actually not making any money. That's basically what's going on. And maybe you're saying to yourself, well, yeah, but in a few years, the property will appreciate. You know, I bought it today at 3 million and maybe tomorrow I'll sell it for 4 million. Ah, then you're trading. You're not buying an income stream, which is what I do. That's the difference between investing and trading. A trader hops on and hops off. An investor buys something not because of the thing itself, but rather because of the income stream that it produces. I personally, at this time, I'm involved in real estate in Ukraine. Ukrainian real estate is extremely profitable. You can make returns, easy returns, of between 12 and 15% per year. That's 1% to 1.2% per month, okay? And that in previous example, I was talking 1.2% per year, and here we're talking 1.2% per month, 12 times more. That's a great income stream. Are these properties in Ukraine, are they like, can they compare to some apartment in New York City or something like that? No, not in a million years, but it doesn't matter because as an investor, you're talking about the income. That's what you care about. And I think a lot of people that that get into investing, they confuse the two. They try to make really good trades, but trading is exceedingly difficult. And to be consistently good at trading, well, very few people, if any people on this earth, are consistently good at trading. The greatest minds ever assembled worked at long-term capital management. If you've ever heard of it, look it up. Long-term capital management. They were a hedge fund out in Connecticut back in the 90s. They had two, not one, two Nobel Prize-winning economists on their board of directors. Two Nobel Prize winners on their board of directors. They were headed by a guy called John Meriwether, the greatest bond trader ever. And yet long-term capital management blew up. That is, it went bankrupt. They made bad bets that went the wrong way, and they were geniuses. They were the smartest guys in the room. And they went belly up because trading is like playing the casino. Eventually, you're going to lose. Now, the issue becomes, how much do you want to lose? And that's why I don't believe in trading all the time. If there's an opportunity to trade and it's a clear opportunity, a clear shot, that's different. But you got to understand what you're doing. You're risky, okay? If you want to invest, you buy an income stream. Let me give you an example. There's this guy I know in Chile, not a very pleasant guy, actually, a guy I did not care for very much. He was kind of like an asshole, but he was a smart customer. And I knew for a fact, it's not that he told me what I'm about to tell you. I heard it from some other people. This guy was kind of like an asshole, but he heard about some storage facilities, industrial storage facilities, warehouses basically, that were being auctioned off in a bankruptcy proceeding. And he went down, and it was the bankruptcy proceeding of this company, and he went down specifically to buy these warehouses that were in a crappy industrial area of Santiago. And the people there at the bankruptcy auction, they were interested in the other sexy stuff, because this company that was, you know, that was going through bankruptcy, they were auctioning off a whole bunch of crap, you know, properties, stock, all kinds of stuff, because this company was a very, you know, it had a lot of different pieces to it, right? And but this guy I knew was interested only in those warehouses, and he bought them for a song. He bought them for something like $120,000 or $150,000, something like that. It was cheap. I forget how much it was. The point was that those warehouses had net income of $30,000 a month. A month. Doesn't even matter if the guy actually paid $300,000 for the fucking warehouses, right? If he's getting 30,000 a month, that's 10% return on investment per month in a year's time, less than years, in 10 months time, assuming it was like 300,000, and I know it was less. I forget the number at this point, but I'll remember, it doesn't matter. The point is, this guy lucked into the greatest income producing asset he could have ever bought. And of course, it was crappy. And he actually did have to put in some money to fix it a little bit because the roof was leaking and something like that. And some of the customers at the warehouse got pissed off about it. I know because one of the customers of the warehouses was the publisher of a publishing house there in Chile that I knew. I knew the guy personally. And he told me about this deal. And he told me that he didn't understand why nobody else went for that particular property. And I knew it immediately. I knew instantly why, because a lot of investors are snobs. A lot of investors turn up their nose at something that is not sexy. A lot of investors want something that is sexy, that is cool. And a lot of investment bankers push overly sophisticated, overly complex investments on their customers, on these customers who want a sexy investment of some sort. And these guys who are looking for something sexy, something cool, they get involved in something that sounds really neat and nifty and has all these bells and whistles. But the problem is that they are overly complex, and a lot of times they fail. And see, this is what you as an investor want to ignore. It doesn't matter how sexy or unsexy a business is. You want to buy the income stream. That's what you're buying if you're an investor. Now, in my own case also, I make bets on what will happen. Now, what does this mean? You see, I tend to be very well informed, not because I'm smarter or have inside information, but because I consume news all the time and I pay attention to news wheresoever it comes from. A lot of times I'm ahead of the curve, not because I'm smarter, not because I'm even better informed. A lot of times I just hear stuff from the regular mainstream media, but I just pay attention to it before other people are paying attention to it. My latest and greatest, and it really was one of my great bets, was the whole coronavirus thing. In January, late January, I want to say around like January 20th, I heard about it, and I started paying attention to it, really paying attention to it, when I heard that Foxconn, the big factory in China, had been shut down, as well as the Johnson & Johnson factory in China that had also been shut down because of this coronavirus. And I thought to myself, holy shit, this is serious. And so I thought to myself, this is going to interrupt the supply chain of a whole bunch of companies. And so these companies, they're not going to be able to sell product because they're not going to have these vital components for their product. If they don't sell product, their stock price, what's going to happen? Well, it's going to go down because their earnings are going to go down, right? And so I placed a whole bunch of short bets. I placed a whole bunch of short bets on specific companies, on markets, and also at different ranges. I sold these puts in early February. I want to say February 4th through the 6th. I was on my skiing vacation. My kids and my wife were screaming at me that I was on the fucking phone with my broker setting up these puts. But I sold those puts. I sold March, April, May puts. And come March 23rd, was it? I got all my puts bought out by my counterparty, which I thought at the time was a smart move to make because things were going south so quickly that I thought to myself, if I don't sell now, maybe my counterparty is not going to be around for me to collect. And it was a big, big financial institution, but that's how freaked out I was. This is around like March, I want to say March 17th. It was before the big bang, before the big collapse, but everybody could see it coming, you know? But anyway, it doesn't matter. I made out like a bandit. I'm not going to tell you how much it was, but net, it improved my net worth by, well, I know exactly how much it improved my net worth. The whole operation, I basically took away 38% of my net worth. That's how much I won. One of the great bets of my life. I'm very happy about it, to tell you the truth, as you can imagine. But the point remains, see, I made a bet on what was going to happen. And also what's key is I never bet on any one thing more than 10% of my net worth, not of my investable funds, of my net worth, okay? Never 10% in anything, in any one thing, okay? And you also always want to be careful that, for instance, if you're involved in, say, stocks, And also mutual funds, you want to make sure that the stock, that the mutual fund does not own some of the stock that you own on your own. See what I'm saying? A lot of people do that. They don't even notice that they're doing it. You know, they get involved in, like, say, emerging funds without realizing that they own some stock in some emerging fund. And so if one goes tits up, the other is also going to go tits up. You know, it's not that they're causally linked, but correlated. You see, a lot of people, they screw up that way. But anyway, I always limit my bet, and no matter what the temptation, I never cross that 10% mark. Okay. Oh, wait, did I just say that I never put more than 10% of my net worth? No, my mistake. I meant to say of my investable assets, of the money I have to play. Okay. Sorry about that. That was my mistake. You always want to minimize your exposure. Okay. And 10% is a good enough number. And it's a good rule of thumb because, like what happened to me with the puts, there was an opportunity for me to put more money into the puts. And I was really tempted to do so. I didn't. I only bet, I reached my ceiling on that particular bet or series of bets by hitting the 10% mark of my investable funds, not my net worth, my investable funds on the puts. The reason being is you want to be disciplined in that regard, because even if you have a sure thing, there's no such thing as a sure thing, and you can still lose. And it's much better to lose just 10% and to miss out on some profit. You see what I'm saying? Let me rephrase. See, would it have been great if instead of putting just 10% of my investable assets into puts, I put 20 or 30 or 40%? Sure, I would have made shitloads more money, okay? Of course. But I know that now, retrospectively. At the time, it seemed like a very, very smart bet, what I was doing, but it wasn't a sure thing. I didn't have a crystal ball. And so that's why I was like fine with going 10%. I debated it because I was positive that it was going to be a real big hit. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I should, you know, load up more on the May puts, because I was thinking that maybe March would be too soon. Proved not to be the case, but I was thinking that maybe March would be too soon, or maybe this, that, the other. But in the end, you know, I thought if I put more than 10% for May puts, what if I'm wrong? And so that was the thing. What if I'm wrong? I'll lose it. I prefer to win less as opposed to lose more. You see what I'm saying? Okay. And the other thing I'm always concerned about is counterparty risk. Counterparty risk, because see, if you get involved in any bet, in any trade, what happens if your counterparty can't make good on it? Okay. This is the thing that you should always consider, especially now in these times that are really out of whack. And God knows what the hell is going to happen in the next 5 years. You always want to be involved in something where your counterparty risk is minimized. Now, this also goes for your counterparty is also, think of it, your bank. The bank where you have your money stored, you want to be thinking, you know, what financial shape is this bank in? If there's a financial crisis, will it go belly up? You see what I'm saying? You always want to be aware of your counterparty risk wherever you put your money, whatsoever it is. Okay, don't think of it only in terms of trading. Think of it in terms of everything. For instance, like I have property in Ukraine, in Kharkov specifically, but also in other cities. But you know, Kharkov is about 100 kilometers away from the Russian border. How likely is it that the Russians will invade it? Will invade Ukraine and invade Kharkov? Would they invade it? Would they blow up the city? You know, it's happened in other cities, in other emerging market cities. You know, Beirut back in the 70s was booming. And then it had a civil war and the whole country was annihilated. You know, Beirut, the pearl of the Mediterranean, was destroyed. You know, could that happen in Kharkov? Sure it can. What are the odds of that? Very low. And therefore, you know, fine. But you see what I'm saying? Of always thinking about your counterparty risk. Your counterparty is not necessarily the institution you're doing business with. It can be the place where you're putting your money in. Technically, of course, a counterparty is a financial institution or another investor that you are betting with or against or whatnot. That's technically what a counterparty is. But expand the notion of what a counterparty is. So in your head, you're always thinking and evaluating where you park your money in whatever it is that you're doing. Be it a bank, be it a trade, be it a real estate investment. You always want to be thinking of that counterparty risk. Okay. Now, some guys ask me, you know, how do you spot a business opportunity? That's a really good question, and it's really kind of like impossible to answer. Each person has to figure it out on their own. But I can give you some hints, okay? And I know this is not very satisfying. I mean, everybody wants like the magic answer, but you see, there is no magic answer. If there were, everyone would know it and everybody would be doing it. You see? And that's a key issue. You always have to keep that in mind, that whenever everybody has the same question, know that there is no answer. There is no answer, because if there were an answer, everybody would be doing it. It would be there would be no question. It would just be common knowledge. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so how do you spot a business opportunity, which is a question lots of people ask. In this particular case, it was Roberto and Peter. Well, I don't know about that, but what I do know is that, see, in all of my life, I've only done those things that I enjoy. And then I try to figure out how to make money off of it, how to sell it, okay? And it goes for everything, okay? Like, for instance, the whole video thing with YouTube. That was a hobby. I wanted to do videos. I thought it'd be cool. I thought it'd be cool. I thought it'd be interesting. And at first I tried to copy Casey Neistat. That was a fucking disaster. Yeah, I was no good at it. But then I started, slowly honing in on the kind of videos that I liked doing and that I was good at. And lo and behold, I got a big channel. But you see, it's not like I'm thinking to myself, ooh, how can I have a big YouTube channel? No, that's not it. It's more, what is cool to me? What do I enjoy doing? And then once I do it and do it relatively well, how can I sell it? You see the difference? See, a lot of people, they say, I want to make a lot of money. I personally think that that is a mistake. To start from the question of, I want to make a lot of money, how do I make a lot of money? Because you're always going to be chasing get rich quick schemes. You see? I think about it. Like, for instance, you say to me, I want to make a lot of money. Okay, fine. I say to you, hey, I know this great way that you can make a lot of money. All you have to do is pay me, $1,000, and I'll give you these hair and makeup products, and you go around door to door, try to sell them. And you're like, okay, I'll do that. And you pay me $1,000, and you take the box of hair and makeup products and try to sell them. And of course, you fail miserably. Yeah. And what happens then? Then you say, oh shit, I gotta find some other scheme to make money. You see? And who made money off of that? I did, because I found a fool, you. And I said to you, hey, give me your money and I'll help you get rich. You see? You see how dangerous it is to be thinking, how do I get rich? Never think that. Never think that. Never think, how do I get rich? Do what you enjoy and then figure out, how do I sell this? How do I get money from doing this thing so I can continue to do this thing that I enjoy, but somebody else is paying me for it? You see? Okay, like there's this guy, his name slips my mind. He's this like portly guy with a baseball cap and a little goatee. He's down in like Mississippi or Arkansas or someplace. And he does this woodworking channel. It's incredibly successful. It has several 100,000 subscribers and tens of thousands of views per day, if not 100,000 views per day. I know that guy must be making, off of his YouTube channel alone, he must be making easy 150 grand a year, no, without breaking a sweat, okay? Now here's the thing, see, the guy started out just doing furniture, okay, woodworking furniture. And he would sell this furniture. And then he started, recording himself doing the furniture. And the thing is, see, at first, the guy, I followed his career from the start. His name slips my mind. It doesn't matter. The thing is, see, this guy, he started first at this apartment that he lived in because he was the building manager of this apartment complex, a little apartment complex. And so he had this little apartment that's where he lived in exchange for managing the apartment complex. And of course, managing the apartment complex was not that difficult. So in the spare time he had, he started doing woodworking. And in this little shitty apartment he started getting equipment and gear to make furniture. And that's how he started. And he started like making furniture and selling it. And he'd make a few bucks here and there, not a hell of a lot, obviously. But he would record them, he would make videos. And little by little, his woodworking business, his furniture making business expanded, grew. He got more customers, got more sales, got more money, but also his YouTube channel improved. And so you see what he's doing there. He was doing something that he really enjoyed, which was woodworking. And he was trying to figure out, well, how can I make money off this shit? I want to do this, woodworking. I want to do furniture. How do I make money off this crap? You see the mentality there. He wasn't thinking, how can I have 150,000 a year from YouTube and sell like a lot of furniture? No, no, no. He was thinking, I love to make furniture. How do I make money off of it? You see the difference. It's so important. And I hate to go on and on and on about it, but a lot of people sort of like miss the point of it. They miss the simple notion. How do you make money off of something? Not, I want to make money. Those are two vastly different questions. You'll find as you get older that it's the dumb people who say, how do I get rich? The dumb people or the immature people or the dumb people, frankly, they say, how do I get rich? And they chase get rich quick schemes and they all fail, okay? The guys who make a lot of fucking money, they don't think that way. They recognize that money a lot of times comes from doing that thing that you really enjoy. And here's the other thing, see, you're thinking of, how can I get someone else to pay for this? See, that's the key issue. You know, when I started doing YouTube and I put ads on my YouTube videos, right? I wasn't really thinking to myself that I was going to get a lot of viewers, because I wasn't getting a lot of viewers. But I started putting ads on it and started up a Patreon. And you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, well, how do I recover the expense of my cameras and perhaps get enough extra coin to buy some better cameras? That's what I was thinking. That was the extent of my thinking of like, how can I make money off of this? You see, I was not thinking I'm going to make a lot of money off of this. And in fact, I didn't. For the first 15 months of my YouTube channel, altogether, you know, with all the ads, I must have made maybe $5,000. That's like Patreon and the ads on my channel for the first 15 months, less than $5,000. I had spent more than $5,000 on my gear. Between the computer I bought for to make videos, because the computer I had was just too small. It wasn't powerful enough, right? You know, to get the computer to do it, the cameras and a couple of lenses and stuff like that. Altogether, I'd spent more than $5 grand. Okay, I mean, for me, the hobby was a net loss, a money loser, but it was fun to do. It was a lot of fun to do. And then eventually, but you see the mentality. Okay, I'm going on and on about this, but I want to emphasize this notion. Never try to make money, because you will not make money. In business opportunities, just like think of how you can sell something. Do what you enjoy and figure out how you can sell something. Okay, now the next question is, why are people so stupid? This question arose because, like, in January, there are a lot of people who knew about coronavirus, and a lot of people were sophisticated enough to know how to take advantage of the situation and potentially earn a lot of money. The fact of the matter is, when I put my when I sold my puts in early February, see, the guys I was talking to, the brokers at the investment bank, well, not brokers, they're bankers, but those guys who were taking my puts, right? I explained to them the bet, and they thought that it was a loser bet, even though they understood exactly what was going on. They knew what was going on. They understood that big factories in China were shutting down, and yet they didn't prepare for it. They refused to accept it. That was really weird, I thought at the time. And I thought to myself, maybe they know something I don't. But then I started thinking to myself, and I've known a lot of bankers in my time. In fact, my dad was a banker. And bankers, see, a lot of times what they'll do is they will act like they know shitloads more than they actually do, and make you distrust your own knowledge, not distrust your intuition, but distrust the things you actually do know. Because these guys are very slick, right? And so I was talking to these guys, I was telling about them, and they made me feel insecure about what I was doing, right? And they realized at one point I was talking to them that they were making me so insecure that maybe I'd withdraw the puts that I was selling, and they were going to make money off of of the puts I was selling. And so they were like, at the time they thought, but it turned out they were wrong. But anyway, And so they dialed back their skepticism. But see, they were handling better information than I had. But see, I realized that most people are reluctant to act. They're afraid to act. They don't think that what they know will actually affect reality. And this is a weird thing, but it's true. People kind of like, they know what's true. It's sort of like they see a train coming at them. They see it, but they keep on standing on the train tracks. They almost like they don't believe the reality that is fast approaching. It's the weirdest thing, and it happens all the time in all kinds of circumstances. See, you have to keep in mind the difference between a reluctance to act when you see what's happening versus a skepticism about what's happening. That's very different, okay? But these guys I was talking you about, rather, I was talking to, these guys, they knew the same information I did. They had seen the videos of the Chinese government spraying the whole city with, God knows what the fuck they sprayed those cities with, right? To kill this virus. They were operating with the same information that I had, and in many cases, probably better information, because after all, they had a Bloomberg terminal right there. I don't have a Bloomberg terminal anymore and shit like that. But like, see, they knew more. And even though they knew more, they sort of like didn't believe it. It's a weird thing, and you got to guard against it, okay? The other thing is that people allow their biases to cloud their judgment. What does that mean? Well, there are all kinds of biases that you have. Excuse me. There are all kinds of biases that you have, that normal people have all the time. Now, for instance, there's one of the biases is the sunk cost fallacy, right? That's the sunk cost fallacy is that, see, if you've invested a lot of money or time or effort into something, you're reluctant to give it up because you don't want to throw away all that effort or money or time or whatever it is that you spent on that activity or that thing. You're reluctant to throw it away. It's the old adage, throwing good money after bad. And people do that all the time. See, it's simple. It's like, you go to a casino, you bet on red on the roulette table, you lose. It turns out black. You bet on red again, it comes out 0-0. You lose again, and you bet on red again, yeah, and you lose again. And you're saying to yourself, it's impossible. I bet on red 3 times and I lost 3 times. Well, actually, it's not impossible. It's perfectly reasonable to lose 3 times in a row if you bet on red, okay? It happens all the time. But see, that's the sunk cost fallacy. You bet on one and you were sure that you were going to win. And when you didn't win, you bet some more and bet some more. And then all of a sudden, you're broke. You bet it all in 3 spins of the roulette table and you've got nothing to show for it. And of course, now that you're broke, the next spin of the wheel comes out red. It's typical, okay? It's incredibly frustrating, but that's one of the biases that cloud people's judgment. There are a whole host of it. And you just Google, biases, and there you go. There are so many biases that we naturally have, that they have evolved in us, and we have to guard against them. And one of the worst, it seems to me, is the sunk cost fallacy. It's one that I personally have suffered from many times, a reluctance to walk away from a bad bet. A reluctance or an inability to say, I'm done, up to here, I'm good. It's only now that I'm older that I am much more comfortable walking away from a decision, walking away from a bad bet. And it's something that, in my own case, you acquire through time. But anyway, biases are what make people stupid. Biases make them incredibly stupid. And a lot of times, you know what the bias is? You see, they see everybody else doing the same stupidity, and therefore they think that there's security in numbers. Or they see everybody doing the same stupidity, and they know that it's stupid, but they don't want to seem like the odd man out, which is incredible to me. Incredible to me. Although now, as a much older man, I realize why. Because when I was a boy, I was picked on a lot. Because I was smarter than the other kids, because I had a big mouth, a smart mouth, because I was always like the new kid, because we tended to move around a lot because of my dad's job in banking. And so I wound up going to many different schools. And so I was always like the new kid. And so I didn't know the rules. And so for various reasons, I was often picked on often I was the kid who was out of step with everybody else, and because of that early lesson, which was very alienating and very unhappy, I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, it taught me a great deal of independence. And so now, when I see everybody else doing something stupid, and I'm talking when everybody else is doing something stupid, and I realize that it's stupid and I'm not going to do it, I'm going to do the complete opposite, I don't have a problem doing the complete opposite. And I march on my merry way, and I watch as everybody else, marches off a cliff, and I wind up, in paradise with hookers and cocaine, You know what I mean, of course. There aren't that many hookers and cocaine in my life, unfortunately. I should get more, but be that as it may, the point. See, that kind of independence takes a long time to master, and it's not easy to master, especially if you have not been in my situation when I was young, of being ostracized, of being out of step, of being bullied and picked on. You don't learn that, and as an adult, you try to be independent, it can be awfully goddamn hard because there is comfort and safety in numbers. It's a natural human instinct. It's a natural instinct not only of human beings, but just about of every animal. That's why lemmings wind up going off a cliff, yeah? Because the lemmings think that everything is going great because they're in the middle of the pack and the pack knows where it's going, right? And the pack winds up going off the cliff. Story as old as time, but that's what happens, those biases, they get to you. So that clarity of thinking, of looking at things as they actually are, and making your moves based on that information, on accurate information of reality, that's very tough because it requires independence. And a lot of times that independence means that you're going to be doing something that nobody else is doing, and you're going to feel foolish. And there are relatively few people who can do that, of feeling foolish and say, no, I'm going to keep on doing this because eventually they'll see that I'm right. Very few people who can do that, okay? And on top of that, a lot of times you can find yourself your vision clouded, your judgment clouded by vanity, because a lot of times you'll see everybody else doing one thing and you'll say, no, I'm going to do it my way and march independently on your own, and not realize that you're going in a different direction, not because it's the smart move, but because you're vain and want to show that you're independent. See, that's a different kind of bias, where a lot of times a guy will go against the grain, not because going against the grain is what he thinks is the right thing, but just to go against the grain. See, it's an issue that your North Star has to be reality, not vanity. And you have to be truly independent. That is, go with the flow when the flow is going in the right direction, and go against the flow when you clear-headedly realize that the flow is going in the wrong direction and you're going to go in a different direction, which is the right direction. You see? And finally, the other reason people are so stupid is that they're lazy. Simple as that. It's not complicated. A lot of times people, how can I put this? They are too lazy to find out the truth about something, and they just listen half-assed to some nonsense and take it as the gospel. They're too lazy to do the digging themselves, or finding out themselves about whatever, about whatsoever it may be, okay? Not necessarily, anything at all that you can imagine. People are lazy, huh? And people are lazy, and it surprises me because I personally, it's really funny. I personally think that I'm lazy, but I accomplish a great deal. And I've noticed that there are a lot of people who think that they are hardworking, but in fact don't accomplish just about anything. And I personally consider them lazy. So the whole laziness thing, it's a weird thing. I have to think about it some more, actually. But lazy people of just basically just sitting on their ass and not really trying to reach whatever. Yeah, that's the reason. I mean, so many people say that they want to be this, that, the other. They want to be a millionaire, they want to be a rock star, they want to be an astronaut, they want to be whatever the fuck, but they don't put any effort to do that. Yeah. A lot of times people are stupid and they make stupid decisions because they were too lazy to find out which was the smart decision to make, and they just went along with whatever somebody said. That's the truth of the matter. That's how things are. That's how people are, and that's why people are so stupid and they make such stupid decisions. I'm going to talk about this a lot more in tomorrow's webinar, webinar number 5. But the coronavirus lockdown, it's looking retrospectively to have been a horrible decision. The whole thing of locking down all of the Western economies over this coronavirus thing seems to retrospectively have been a horrible decision. And what's worse is that a lot of people want to continue the lockdown because their pride is involved, because they were part of the decision, or they were cheerleaders to the decision of closing up the entire economy. And now the truth of the matter is staring them at the face. That the truth being, of course, that this is not so bad. It's not the end of the world. It's serious. There are a lot of people who have died, no question, but it's not the end of the world. And but the closing of the economy is bringing about the end of the economy, and it's going to inflict untold damage on the economy. And while these people are sort of like stuck in their decision, and so yeah, that's another bias. Okay, they made a decision. It's the sunk cost fallacy once again. They made a decision. It was the wrong decision. They can't admit it to themselves, so they double down on it. Yeah, that happens all the time. But anyway, the next item up is an asset rally sustainable? Okay. Now, this came up because at the time, the stock market had dropped precipitously, about like 30% or more than 30%, and it had bounced and it was rallying. Okay. Okay. So here's the thing that you have to understand about the last 15 years. Okay. The last 15 years or so, I would venture to argue since at least the first dot-com bubble in the year 2000, so we're going on 20 years, the Federal Reserve basically goosed the asset market that is stocks and bonds. They goosed it by putting out very, very cheap money. Because remember, the interest price of money, the interest rates, that is the price of money. Think about it. See, if I lend you $100 at say 7% interest, 7% yearly interest, that means that you have to pay me at a year's time. You have to pay me that $100 plus $7. Therefore, what's the price of the 1 year of my $100? $7. That's the price of money. You see. Now, interest rates that are set by the Federal Reserve and by the European Central Bank and by the Bank of Japan and the Bank of England, respectively, in those different markets, they how can I put this? How do you arrive at the correct price of an item, whatsoever that item may be? Supply and demand, right? If you're selling cars, if you're selling dishwashing soap, you're selling oil, you're selling anything, the price is fixed by the market, by the intersection of the amount of supply and the amount of demand. That's where you get the price of the thing. But if you have an organization like the central banks that is artificially pricing something, then you get automatically, you're going to have market distortions. Those market distortions go on long enough, you're going to have what we have now, which is assets are hyperinflated. When I was growing up back in the 80s and I got interested in finance for the first time, I started like getting my dad to explain economics and stocks and bonds and all that crap, right? The price to earnings ratio of companies was usually between 10 and 12 to 1. That is the EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization of a company. That number, the EBITDA number, divided by the price of the stock. It was usually, 10%, 8%, i.e. 10 to 1, 12 to 1. Roughly around that range. Today, it's 35 to 1, or before this whole fiasco, it was 35 to 1. 35 to 1. That's unprecedented, right? Well, what does that tell you? It tells you that the prices of those assets have gone up threefold, almost 3.5-fold, 400, 450%. In real terms, if real terms you think of it as the earnings of a company. Is that realistic? No, it's hyperinflation. Hyperinflation, not of the currency, of the assets, okay? It hasn't been a consumer hyperinflation. On the contrary, it's been a consumer deflation. Why? Because during the last 40 years, most of the manufacturing industries in the Western democracies were outsourced, shipped overseas to low-cost labor markets. That is Vietnam, China, Mexico, Central America, all these countries where you have people who are getting paid pennies per hour are working to make your consumer products. And that way you can buy your little doodad, for a lot less money. A lot less money than if it had been made in the UK or the United States or France or Germany. You see? I mean, that's basically what happened. So consumers saw deflation, even as those who held assets saw hyperinflation. But of course, the hyperinflation was such that, everything's going up. Yeah. So, everything's going up and that's great, which is wrong. It shouldn't go up just because. It should go up because there is actual improvement in the product, but it wasn't. It was just goosed by the central banks. Okay, so this has ended now. And at this time, we are seeing the death throes of the situation. Now, why are we seeing the death throes of the situation? Well, you see, right now, all these companies in the United States and in Europe and the whole world, frankly, they are not selling anything. Of course not. Everybody's locked down. Yes, there are some companies like Netflix, for instance, that are making tons of money, or Walmart or Amazon. Yeah, sure. I'm not doubting that. But those are the exceptions. There are a handful of companies that are making good money right now. All the other companies, they're shut down. Airline companies, airplane manufacturers, car manufacturers, GM, Ford, BMW, Mercedes, all of them, they're not selling any product. They have got zero revenue because they are not selling any goddamn product. Because they're not selling any product because nobody's driving cars, and they're not even producing product because people go to their fucking factories, right? They are shut down. They're at zero. And yet the prices of the stock keep on floating along. You see how insane that is? What's going to happen? Eventually, those prices are going to crash, okay? They're going to crash. When are they going to crash? I don't know. But the act of levitation that is going on, because that's what's happening, it's like a magic trick that the central banks are pulling, because that's what they're doing. They are going out into the market and buying stocks in these companies to keep up the price of these stock. Now, it makes sense because they're buying these stocks to keep them up, because if they let those stock prices collapse, a lot of pension funds would be wiped out. And there is the hope, the presupposition, the belief that this lockdown will end and everything will go back to quote unquote normal. Now, I personally don't think that it's going to go back to normal, okay? Certainly not going to go back to normal anytime soon. And even if it were to go back to normal, instantly. Suppose it went back to normal tomorrow. Excuse me, there are too many words trying to come out of my mouth. Suppose it was we reopen the economy tomorrow, or on Monday. Today's Saturday, okay, fine, Monday. We reopen the whole fucking thing, everything reopened. Everybody can go to airports and rock concerts and supermarkets and none of this social distancing shit. It's all done, okay? We sprinkle some fairy dust and everything is copacetic, right? Can everybody go back to work? No, because there are a whole bunch of people whose businesses are already broke. They're gone and they're not coming back. And you say, oh, it's just some restaurants here and there. No, it's most restaurants. Most restaurants are shuttered and they won't ever open again, period. Yeah. A lot of franchises even, McDonald's and shit like that. Yeah, because they're broke. They're all broke. There are a lot of companies, small businesses with less than 10 employees. They're all shuttered. They're all never opening up again. They're done. This has been a catastrophe. And never mind the big companies. And people say that, oh, we just have to get people back to work and be okay. It's going to take a long goddamn time to cycle up and get everything going again. Okay, even if this instantly ended on Monday, like for instance, getting a factory back on track, you think that it's an easy thing? No, it's not. Getting a factory back on track, opened up again, It takes days, weeks, sometimes months. You know what's going on with some of the airlines? That they are having to put like special chemicals in the gas tanks to kill the algae, okay? I mean, the fucking airplanes are deteriorating because they're just sitting there. They're just sitting there. They're not flying. They're not burning any fuel. And I'll get to the oil thing in just a second. They're sitting there deteriorating. That's happening with the airplanes. How long do you think it'll take to check to make sure that the whole fucking airplane is good to fly again? You're not going to be able to do that in an afternoon. No, it's going to take time, a lot of time. And so each day that continues in this is worse for the global economy. Each day that this continues, it's not going to be an additional day before we get back to normal. No, each day that we're in lockdown is, I would venture to say, at least another week before we get to normal, okay? It's going to take a long time to recover from this, okay? Now, the issue becomes, the China-US relationship. When I did this webinar originally back in April 12th, I didn't think that it was looking good. And as of late, I think that it's going to get even worse, okay? My thinking is that eventually there will be a war between the US and China. Yeah, that's what I said on April 12th, and that's what I'll say again. I think that eventually there will be a war between the US and China for a variety of reasons. Number one, there's going to be the issue of blame, because this coronavirus thing clearly came from China, clearly came from a lab run by the Chinese government, and they didn't say peep, they didn't say shit to anybody for too long, and people realize that. They realize it and they don't like it, and they want like basically revenge, payback for that. I think that the Chinese could have avoided this whole situation if they'd been honest and upfront about it. And when this broke out, I tweeted out on January 28th, I thought it was like a bioweapon or something like that. With a little more information, it turns out it's not a bioweapon. They were just fooling around with shit that they shouldn't have, and they had an accident. I mean, that's what I thought at the time. I didn't think it was a deliberate exposure. I didn't think so then. I certainly don't think so now. It's just an accident. It happens all the time, okay? And the best intentioned people suffer accidents all the time. The whole Chernobyl thing, for instance. Nobody thought that they were going to blow up the whole nuclear reactor when they did that test back in '87. It was a genuine accident. They never anticipated it, okay? So this thing here, yeah, it got away from them. It happens all the time. People fuck up, yeah. But what happens is that, of course, they try to cover it up. And the cover up, as everybody knows, is usually worse than the crime. The Chinese covered it up and freaked out, and they freaked out so badly that they freaked out all the Westerners who didn't know what the fuck was going on, all the Western leaders, and the Western leaders decided, fuck it, let's shut the whole fucking thing down just in case, because God knows what's going on, right? God knows what's going on in China because those fuckers aren't telling us. And so, of course, people are realizing that the panicked decision to shut down the entire economy came from Chinese misinformation and lack of information. And so the leaders in the West are basically saying, well, better safe than sorry. They shut down the whole economy. And now, it's turning out that it wasn't so bad after all. It's bad, certainly, but not that bad. And so a lot of people are upset with the Chinese. And the Chinese, what are they doing? They are doing this incredibly ham-fisted propaganda push. And it's not working. People are getting more and more resentful on the one hand. On the other hand, and this is the real thing that has me very worried, I think that there's a large cabal of people in the leadership of the Western economies, of the Western governments, and the Western elites who think that the way to get out of a depression is with a war. One of the prime suspects of this movement is a guy called Paul Krugman. He's a Nobel laureate in economics. I've had my fights with the guy. Yeah, back in, what was it, 2010, 2012, when I was writing about economics. Yeah, I called him a warmonger to his fucking face, because he is. Because back in that day, he was saying that the only thing that got the American economy back on track after the Great Depression was the war, the Second World War. And that, maybe another war, he was intimating, would be a good idea. That's what he was saying back in 2010, 2012. That whole cabal, the basically neoliberal and left-wing economists, they think that it would be a good thing to have a war because they think that the increased demand that is created by a war economy, would pull the American economy out of whatever hole it's in. That's a really despicable attitude, but that's what they're thinking. A lot of people are thinking that. A lot of people in the military-industrial complex would love a war with China because it would mean more profits for them, more power for them. And so I think that there is a real chance, partly justified, partly because of warmongering money grubbers, that there'll be a war with China in the not too distant future. And I think that what you have to pay attention to is the US leadership siding with Taiwan and start acting like they're the defenders of Taiwan. That's when you know that the game is up. That's when you know that they're really serious about starting a war with China, that they want to start a war. They'll provoke China and do whatever it takes for China to make the first move, because they'll want to be like, you know, they want like a Pearl Harbor, okay? A Pearl Harbor, a 9/11, okay? Poor America, we're the victims. Those evil Chinese did something evil to us. Boo-hoo. You know, I mean, like, for instance, when they talk about World War II history, they never talk about the fact that Franklin Roosevelt blockaded Japan's oil purchases, and Japan realized that they would have to go to war with the United States, and so they figured, well, we're going to have to go to war with these fuckers. Might as well strike hard and strike first, you know? And that's why they hit Pearl Harbor. That was the reason. They never talk about that shit. They never talk about the fact that Roosevelt, the evil fuck that he was, provoked the Japanese constantly, relentlessly, for years before Pearl Harbor, because he wanted to get into a war with them. Yeah, he didn't know how to start one. Yeah, he never anticipated that the Japanese would attack Pearl Harbor, which was a fucking brilliant move. If only they'd been lucky and wiped out the aircraft carriers there, the United States would not have won in World War II, but that's alternate history, and that's not important for this conversation. The point is, see, American leadership has a habit of provoking other powers until the other power decides to hit them hard, and the American leadership then turns around and uses that hard blow to justify a massive war effort. That happened with the USS Maine in 1898, which was a false flag. It happened with Pearl Harbor. It happened with the Gulf of Tonkin. It happened with 9/11. Something like that is going to happen with China and Taiwan. And, you know, these, like, defending our friends, the Taiwanese, and the Chinese, you know, I don't know, attack a US aircraft carrier or some shit like that. You know, maybe the Theodore Roosevelt. Remember the Teddy Roosevelt? Well, everybody will cry as they go to war against China, which is, I personally think, is pointless and stupid, but, you know, who's going to listen to me? Except you guys. But you see my point. Yeah, I think that a war with China is in the cards. And it's important to pay attention to what the warning signs are going to be. And a war with China would be, God knows how it would go. And that's the other thing, okay? John, one of the, I forget which John, asked me, you know, what about escaping the United States? Okay, if things are going to go tits up, what about escaping the United States? Well, my thinking is that the United States is such a big country. Okay, it's bigger than Europe, for instance. The U.S. is such a big country that rather than escape the United States, why don't you just escape to someplace better from where you are in the United States? Number one, leaving the United States altogether. I mean, you have to go. You have to want to go to someplace. It's not enough to want to leave one place. You see what I'm saying? See, it's very different motivation when you are running away from something than if you're running towards something, because you run towards something that you think will be better for you. And so when you decide that you are no longer happy in a place, you shouldn't be thinking, how can I get away from this place? No, that's the wrong approach. What you want to be thinking is, what place would I like to go to? And you look around at all the different places, and they're going to be different for everybody. Each of us have different preferences naturally. And so, I mean, like, personally, you know, I love the snow. I hate the sand and the heat. So I'm not going to fucking go to the beach ever. You know, I'll go to some place, you know, snowy, because that's what I like. You know, the mountains and shit. That's me. And you are probably the opposite. And so you never listen to where other people are telling you where to go. You figure it out on your own. what you would like to go to, where you would like to go to rather, and what you would like to do. And once you have decided on that, then you leave. You see what I'm saying? And leaving the United States is very simple. I haven't lived in the United States in 20 years. I left the United States in August of 2001. So it's coming up on 19 years. Yeah. And you know, leaving the United States, it's not that big of a deal, but you have to realize why you're leaving or what you are going to. Hmm? The idea of simply escaping someplace, no, that's childish. That's childish and foolish. Children want to escape. Hmm? But grown men, they want to go to something, to a place where they can achieve their hopes and dreams. It's very different. And that's how you should be focusing that particular problem. Now, finally, why is there going to be a Great Depression 2.0? Well, as I was explaining before, there are a lot of companies that are going to be going bankrupt, okay? And not just small shops, it's big companies too, okay? They're going to be going bankrupt because no company can survive without revenue. Simple as that. And we're coming up on, what, a month and a half of no revenue for a lot of companies. Most small businesses do not have enough cash to survive for 2 weeks without revenue, okay? Fuck it, 1 week without revenue. Restaurants can't survive without constant revenue. To give it a simple example, most businesses cannot survive for the amount of time that we're going on this lockdown. So you're gonna have a wave of bankruptcies. Now you say to me that, well, bankruptcies are no big deal. You know, the company gets bankrupt and whatever assets the company has are sold off and at the bankruptcy auction, and you know, you recycle all that shit. You know, it's never really gone. That's absolutely true. But the problem is it's the number of bankruptcies. See, you have so many bankruptcies that it's going to take a long time to process them. And you think to yourself, well, it's just, you know, it's legal work. It's, you know, yeah, but that shit takes time. Simple as that. And you got to keep in mind the whole bankruptcy system is not designed to have like hundreds and thousands of different businesses go belly up at the same time. It's not designed for that. Okay. The failure rate, I have no idea what the bankruptcy rate usually is, but much smaller than what we're going to be experiencing now. Nobody's prepared for this number of bankruptcies. Okay. And there's the problem of depreciation of assets. This is something that people usually don't pay attention to because it's not sexy. But depreciation of assets is a key component in any kind of bankruptcy. You have an asset, like I was telling you before, an airplane. You have a jetliner, 777 or whatever the fuck, and your airline goes broke. That plane, if it's not maintained, taken care of, it depreciates. All these airplanes for all these companies, the airlines, they're all depreciating rapidly, okay? Because they're not designed to be left there sitting there rotting for weeks and weeks. It's like food. It rots, it spoils, okay? And so you have all these assets for all these bankrupt companies. And as they wait in line to go through bankruptcy, all their assets are depreciating rapidly, okay? And so you have that problem. You have another problem, which is that you are not going to see any kind of loan to start a company, to start a company or business. It's just not going to happen. Consumer and business loans are dead for all intents and purposes. Why? Because banks don't want to take the risk, and which is logical, reasonable from their point of view, because right now the whole economy is shuttered. Now it might start with a bang. And I personally think that short term, once the economy does start, there will be a bit of a bang, a bit of an upswing. The upswing of everybody, you know, back working again and like finally out of the house and back on the job and whatnot. And yeah, there'll be a bit of a pop, but that pop is going to be very short-lived. Why is it going to be short-lived? Because the more serious problems will become apparent, okay? The more serious problems will become apparent insofar as this depression is concerned, namely that there isn't going to be any cash floating around to start new businesses, that also a lot of business owners are going to be tied up in the litigation of the bankruptcy, and that's going to take a long goddamn time, okay? Don't underestimate that. It seems like simple. It's not. And so those entrepreneurs that had a business before the lockdown and they went broke, they're going to be tied up in that bankruptcy for a long time. They're not going to have the energy or inclination to start up a new business. And they're simply not going to have the time in many cases because they're going to be tied up with this bankruptcy of whatever it is that they were doing. And so that whole class of entrepreneurs, they're going to be busy with sorting out the bankruptcy. There aren't going to be consumer and business loans, so demand is not going to be what it used to be, even though it's going to pop once the lockdown ends, because of course people are going to go out and they will buy shit, right? But it's not going to be like the good old days, okay? It's not by a long shot, okay? And you got to keep in mind when you're telling me that, hey, the Federal Reserve is putting out all this money to banks for business loans, right? Yeah, the Federal Reserve is putting out very cheap money to the banks, but see, the Federal Reserve cannot force these banks to lend out money. It can't. It can pressure them. It can say all kinds of stuff, but the bank can just come back and say, well, it's that all the customers we're getting, well, they're not qualified. They're too high a risk, and you don't want us to go bankrupt, right? That's basically what the banks are going to say. Yeah, because the banks, they're going to be fucking terrified of going under, which is reasonable. And so you're not going to have the activity of the good old days. At the end of the lockdown, because of course people are going to go out, the economy will pop, but it's not going to go back to the good old days. And frankly, I think that the good old days, we're not going to see the good old days for at least a decade. And if there is a war with China, that war with China is not going to be like the Second World War. It's going to be shitloads worse, and it's going to be a fucking disaster, because today we have intercontinental ballistic missiles, okay? And that's something that didn't exist in 1941. And so if there is a war with China, it's going to be a whole different ball game, and a potentially far riskier ball game. And the fucking thing could go nuclear, for crying out loud. So no, the good old days, they're gone. We are not coming back to the good old days. And we are going to go through a depression 2.0. And what'll happen in that depression 2.0? It's anybody's guess. Okay. I mean, shit, like last week, I'm going to be talking about the negative prices for oil that popped up last week, which is really fucking funny, right? For those of you who don't know, what happened last week, the price of a barrel of oil turned negative. It hit -40. Yeah, what does that mean? That means that, if you went up to buy a barrel of oil, they'd give you $40 with your barrel of oil. Of course, that wasn't what was going on, okay? For those of you who don't know, who just heard that headline, you might have thought for a second that if you would just go and find that seller of oil, he would give you that barrel of oil plus $40. No, what was going on was that, see, oil contracts, I'm not that familiar with oil contracts. I'm not that familiar with commodities in general. I know a little bit about oil and, precious metals, gold and silver and platinum. But in general, I don't really track commodities. I'm just not particularly interested. But the point, contracts, oil contracts and futures contracts in different commodities, right? Well, this is a physical commodity, right? It's not like a piece of paper. So a futures contract is that you promise to deliver a specific commodity to a specific location by a certain date. Now, what happened was that all of a sudden, all of these traders had these future contracts for May oil. Now, the May oil of these contracts was supposed to be delivered in Cushing, Oklahoma. Cushing, Oklahoma is a big nexus point with huge storage facilities to store oil. And it's sort of like a nexus for all the pipelines in the United States. And so it's quite natural that a lot of these future contracts are for oil to be delivered at Cushing. But the problem is that Cushing's oil tanks, storage facilities, they're all booked up. They're all full, of course, because nobody's driving, nobody's flying. So there's all this oil. So all of a sudden, these traders had these contracts where they had to deliver this oil to Cushing. But where are they going to deliver it? There's no place to receive it. And so they wanted to get these contracts off their hands. That's why the price went negative. They wanted to sell these future contracts to anybody who would buy them, because then that delivery of oil in Cushing would become their problem, okay? The buyer's problem, right? And so that's why they were offering these futures contracts for -$40. They were basically saying, take this oil that I have, and here's 40 bucks, and you deal with the hassle of wherever the fuck this oil is going to land. Okay, that's what they were doing. So the only way that you could have gone there and gotten this contract whereby you get a barrel of oil plus 40 bucks is if you, between today and the 1st of May, built a 100,000 barrel storage facility in Cushing, Oklahoma. Yeah, if you could build it in 5 days and have it approved and all the environmental impact statements done and you know, let alone build the fucking thing in 5 days, which is of course impossible because building such a facility takes at least 9 months. Yeah, and so then, yeah, sure, you would have gotten, you know, a barrel of oil plus 40 bucks. But barring that, no, there is no way to do that, okay? But see, all kinds of weirdness like that is going to continue to happen because of this lockdown, because nobody's ever, this is unprecedented, literally. People use the word unprecedented, that is, this has never happened before. That's what the word unprecedented means. But they use it a lot of times to exaggerate. Like when people say literally blah, 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 they don't really mean literally, it's figuratively, right? But in this case, this really is unprecedented. This has never happened. It has never happened in history where you have distribution networks that are completely paralyzed. Never. I'm talking oil distribution, I'm talking all commodities, right? And we're starting to see the problems in, of all things, the pork market, yeah? Because a lot of pork producers are shutting down factories for various reasons. And one of them is oversupply. One of them is coronavirus. Yeah, and we're having all kinds of problems that are inconceivable because, see, this whole system that we have is like a shark. It never stops swinging. It keeps on going forward all the time. If it ever stops, as has stopped now, all kinds of crazy ass shit happens that nobody can believe, that everybody's like, holy cow, what the fuck is going on? Well, see, you got negative oil prices, for instance. And you're gonna have a lot of other weird shit going on, especially come the 1st of May, okay? For me, this 1st of May, or really, it's gonna be the 3rd of May. Let me see, wait. Today's the 25th, right? 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. The 1st of May is gonna be on Friday. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it's really going to be on the 4th of May. On the 4th of May, we're going to see all kinds of fucking insanity. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what insanity is going to pop up on May 4th. But you see, why May 4th? Well, because when everything was shut down in mid-March and the 1st of April rolled around, that was the first month where there were no payments. Okay, but it was after like the first half of March was okay. And then the second half of March was shut down, right? But now, see, by the 1st of May, we will have 30 continuous days of shutdown. And you add up on top of that what happened in April. So 1st of May, there are going to be a whole bunch of payments due from people who do not have the money. I'm talking like, for instance, renters. There are a whole bunch of people who are renting apartments, houses, whatnot right now. Also, people who are renting offices. And these people aren't going to pay come the 1st of May. What's going to happen to the owners of those properties? Because a lot of them have mortgages. Is it going to be like a domino? Yeah. Already in the mortgage market, you're seeing unprecedented numbers of requests for forbearance because a lot of mortgage contracts, at least in the United States, have stipulations where you can ask for forbearance. For instance, if you lose your job or a catastrophic accident or whatnot. Now, those kinds of forbearance are usually pretty easily acquired when things are normal because the probability of those situations are very low, and so it's no problem. But you know, now everybody's unemployed, and there are certain mortgage classes where a huge majority of people are unemployed. Okay, and we're going to be seeing problems there. We're going to be seeing problems in like jumbo mortgages. I mean, that's something else I read about recently, where you know banks are no longer willing to offer jumbo mortgages because they're not insured by the government, and so mortgages over $500,000 ain't going to happen. And what's that going to do to the price of housing? I personally have already seen what this has done to Airbnb because I'm living here in Amsterdam, and I rent a house that has suffered some very minor rain damage. There was a leak in the roof and it caused a mess, had to be repainted and all that, but nothing really serious. So anyway, I had to leave my house and rent out a place. I rented on Airbnb. And I saw a place closest to my house. It's here in the Canal Zone. My house is on the Canal Zone. It's a stone's throw away from the central station. But I didn't want to go far from my house because, you know, I have my routine and I didn't have to want to move my crap around that far. And so I looked at Airbnb, the closest place to my place that I could rent, and it was really expensive. And so I offered them literally a quarter of what they were asking. And within half an hour, they said yes, that fast. Yeah, because nobody's renting. Everything is available in Airbnb. And so we're going to start seeing the collapse of rental prices, the collapse of asset prices in terms of housing, yeah, all kinds of shit. But what the shape of all this craziness, we won't know for a while. We have to let it decant. We're having a depression because this system has never stopped before. And there are problems inherent with our system that have been going on for 20 years, principally asset inflation. And so now that we have stopped the economy for this coronavirus, we are seeing effects that have never been seen before, and we are going to see more effects that have never been seen before. And all kinds of crazy ass shit is going to happen, and that's what's going to lead us to the Great Depression 2.0. And so it's going to be an exciting, exciting time. Anyway, I've been yapping for an hour and a quarter, so let's call it a presentation, and I'm really curious about your questions. So this is what I'm going to do. In the question section there of the webinar, you can ask a question. A few of you already have. Just ask me any question you have, and let me scan through them, and I will pick on you. And in the meantime, if you just want to say something, raise your hand, and I'll pick on you right now. So raise your hand if you want to say something, and here he is. Let me see. Where anybody? Nobody's raising your hands. Oh man. Oh, Adam Abdi. Hey Adam, how's it going?
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for presenting for us. My question had to do with the Great Depression 2.0. Sorry, I'm just not prepared right now.
Don't worry about it. Take your time.
So, with regards to consumer spending, if there's a mass amount of deflation at hand, then
yes,
isn't that good for people like us, like the younger people, the younger generation? Like it's best if things just like kind of die off, and then people who are younger can actually get the things that they want instead of just ending up like societies in Japan. Like because in Japan, what happened was the Bank of Japan kept buying stuff from the market and asset classes and stuff, and now younger people don't have the ability to buy homes or have families and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, deflation always sounds like a good idea. Yeah, if you have money, if you have income. Now, deflation is a horrifying thing if you don't. Let me explain. See, how does a deflationary spiral happen? Because, by the way, everything you're saying is reasonable, but you have to sort of like look behind a little bit to understand the mechanics of what's going on, okay? And let me explain it to you. A deflationary spiral happens in the following way. Suppose I have a factory, and I'm not selling that many products, my widgets, whatsoever they are. And so you're one of my employees, right, Adam? And unfortunately, I say, Adam, I gotta let you go. And I fire you. And maybe I give you a severance check, right? What do? Well, you take your severance check and you don't spend money because you're unemployed, because you want to husband your resources as carefully as possible because you don't know how long you're going to be unemployed. So maybe you were thinking of buying a car, and you were just about to sign the papers on the car, the lease or the purchase agreement or whatever, and you lost your job because, see, I'm no longer selling that many widgets. And so what do? You don't buy the car. You say, I'll have to wait on buying the car. And what happens to the car manufacturer? Well, because of that sale, perhaps, and maybe not just that sale, but of course, thousands of more like it, they start laying off workers. And those workers who get laid off, they also stop buying stuff. This is a depression. It's demand driven. It's a collapse in demand. And it's very hard to restart that kind of demand because people become traumatized by the fact that they've been unemployed for so long. Because what happens is that as a company closes and lays off workers, those workers don't buy. And as they don't buy, then other companies suffer loss of revenue because there's less demand, and therefore they fire more workers. And those more unemployed repeat the same cycle, and that's why it's called a deflationary spiral. But along the way, what happens is that these companies lower the prices of their goods. Now, you would think that that's very good. They're lowering the prices, right? But if people are unemployed, a lot of times they will never buy an item, no matter how low the price, or the price has to be so low that the company is actually losing money. You see what happens? And
I
so
see.
a deflationary spiral sounds good. Oh, shit is going to be cheaper. But what happens is that, see, what it causes is more unemployment, which in turn causes lower prices and more unemployment. And that's the depression, because that's what happened during the Great Depression. There was less demand, and because of less demand, they fired workers, and the fired workers demanded less. And you see, and so yeah, what would be good would be a asset deflation, that is housing deflation, where you can buy houses not for $1 million, but like for 100,000, something more reasonable. Yeah, that would be great. But for that to happen, you got to go through a depression, okay? And you have to go through a period where banks are not going to lend to buy these houses, because that's the reason that they've risen in price. Let me give you a specific example. When I was living in Los Angeles, I lived in Brentwood in the late 90s. Yeah, late 90s. I was living in an apartment on San Vicente and Bundy. It was this great apartment complex. It was like a cool building at the time. By the way, do you hear me, Adam?
Oh, I hear you. It's just wait.
Oh,
Do you hear me? Yeah, there you go. I was just waiting for you to
yeah,
finish
yeah.
your story.
Oh, yeah, no, I got a little notice here saying that my audio had gone off, but it's all right now. Anyway,
I see. I see.
when I was living there, I lived in this great apartment, and they were offering an apartment identical to mine for $160,000. I remember, and no, sorry, $180,000. And what happened was that I was moving to New York, and so I was like, no, I'm not going to buy it. But then later, years later, I happened to look it up on Zillow. The same complex and the same type apartment, not the same apartment, but very similar. And they were offering it for $640,000. Holy fucking shit. It wasn't that many years later, okay? It was like, I don't know, 15 years later. Okay. Now, why did it go up so much in price? Because of the availability of cheap loans, see? Because when you have cheap mortgage loans, you are able to buy a house, right? So what happens to the sellers? The sellers decide, oh, I'm going to raise the price, from say 180,000 to 210,000. And for you, the borrower, it's not going to represent that much more money because the loan is so cheap anyway. It might represent to you, the buyer, maybe $100 more per month in mortgage payments. So you're like, sure, I'll pay 210,000 for something that was worth before 180,000. And once you decide to sell it, you sell it for a higher price, and the next buyer is going to have the same situation. They're going to say, oh yeah, I'll pay. Say the next time when you sell it, you decide to sell it not for 210,000 but for 250,000. The next buyer says, sure, I'll pay 100 or $150 more per month, on the mortgage payment for this particular property because of this, that, the other, and all the other ones are also more expensive because it's not just happening to your apartment, it's happening to all the apartments in the complex, all the apartments in the neighborhood, all the apartments in the city, all the apartments in the country because of these cheap loans. And so that's how you get asset inflation, because the cheap loans that ultimately originate with the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve sets the price of money, sets the interest rates, as I explained earlier. See, that's the reason why all of a sudden you went from an apartment that cost 180,000 to owning it yourself for 210,000 and selling it for 250,000. A price differential of 70,000 in say a year's time. And like I said, I saw the fucking thing in 98 for 160, and in 2012 for 640. No, 180 in 98, yes, 180 in 98, and 640 in 2000, or maybe 2011, 2012. Let's say 2012. So in 16 years, it went up triple, more than triple. You see?
I see.
And
I
and
see.
and that's because of loans, because of cheap loans. Okay? And so that's the opposite of deflation.
Right.
And you see how it works? So we've been in a period of asset hyperinflation. It's gone up and up and up because of the cheap money. And now that's over. And we're going to start to see deflation, but it's not going to be a good thing. It seems so, but it's not. Have
The
I
thing,
explained it, Adam? I hope I
it
have.
does. Yeah, it does. It does. But here's the way I see it. It's like these people in the financial sector
Right?
and people that you talk to on the streets. It's like they want every day to be summer and they don't want a single day of winter. And it's
Yes, yes, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Thank you. But let me think. And back to the 1929 Great Depression. There's a lot of parallels between now and then, like cheap money, everyone
Yes,
buying on margin, investment
yes.
trusts, which is just an old version of mutual funds that they brought back for
Mhm,
some reason, and then
mhm.
and eventually, like the cycle has to continue. That's the way I see it. Because if one generation it goes on, and the next generation has to pick up the slack that the old generation did. It's like winter, spring, summer, fall, and it goes back again. The more you elongate summer, the worse the winter will get. This wouldn't have
Yeah.
like this deflation was going to happen anyway because there's only so many
Yep.
iPhones you can sell before people get sick of it, and then
Yep.
eventually the prices have to deflate. The more you try and like it's like a ball, you put the ball in the water, you try to push it down, but the
Mhm.
more you push it down, the more it pops back up. So
Yep.
I don't know. It
Exactly
feels
right.
kind of it feels kind
Exactly
of
right.
it feels kind of fruitless trying to like stop this thing from happening, but whatever.
Well, it's see, there are very smart people, and what happens with smart people in charge? Okay, and what happens with smart people is that they're arrogant and they think that they can control it. That this time it'll be different, because this time they're running it, so they know what they're doing. Of course, they
Like a
don't.
self like a
Look,
self
what
like
you're
a
saying that
self-fulfilling
let's
prophecy
hold.
like that,
I beg your pardon.
like a
I
self-fulfilling
beg your pardon.
prophecy, like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, it's not so much a self-fulfilling prophecy as um, another way to look at it. What you said before of the beach ball that you try to put underwater, and the more you push it under, the more it'll pop up. Okay, see, in 2008, all the problems that we're experiencing now, they were foreseen in 2008. I personally foresaw them. Okay, shit, I foresaw the housing bubble in '99. I thought it was crazy. I thought Manhattan real estate prices were insane in '99. Okay, and so foolishly, I didn't buy Manhattan real estate in '99 because I thought this is crazy. But anyway, in 2008, when the global financial crisis happened, they had the opportunity to clean everything up, to take the hit, to bankrupt the banks that had to go bankrupt, to clean up the whole mess. They had the opportunity, but they didn't take it because they didn't have the balls. And so they just threw money at the problem. They threw money at the problem and they arrogantly thought that they could just print their way out of the problem. And all they did was just postpone the inevitable date, which is now. You got to keep in mind the coronavirus didn't cause anything. If anybody says that coronavirus caused this, bullshit. It was just the needle that popped the bubble, okay? The trigger for this whole thing. It wasn't the cause of it. It could have been, the cause could have been anything, by the way. But what we're seeing now, and we will continue to see, is just an effect of bad decisions that have been in place for years. You see what I'm saying, Adam? How old are
Yeah,
you, by the way, kid?
I'm 22. I just graduated and I'm doing my master's in the fall.
Okay. And
Mhm.
how much loan, how much do you have in debt?
Like 20,000. The good news is I have scholarship, so it already covers everything.
Okay. I mean, how much are you on the hook for personally?
Oh, personally, like for the undergraduate, right?
For anything, all debt, student debt that you have, how much?
$20,000.
Okay. Do you think that you can lower that somehow?
Lower that, like, the plan was like in my master's program, I'm working in a research lab, and they're gonna be paying
Hmm.
me. and because I'm living with my family, I can just pay it off immediately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. You're lucky. Stay in school. If they're paying you, that's
Yep,
the best thing you can do for the time being, you know?
yep.
Yeah, because all the rest of us we have to work for a living. You stay in school, be smart, keep on getting your paycheck, and and
Um,
and yeah, pay down. Well, I don't know whether you should pay down your loan or not because there might be hyperinflation. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. So you'll have to stick around and show up tomorrow for me to give you that discussion.
I
Great
will.
talking to you, Adam. Good luck.
You too. See ya.
Okay. Talk to you soon. Let me see. Yeah. So let me. Ooh, there are a bunch of questions. Um, let me see here. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Here, Bill Semmet. I want to talk to you, Bill. You had a really good question, and I want you, if you don't mind, to tell our audience. Bill, are you there?
Hey, Coach, can you hear me? Hey,
Yeah, I
Coach,
hear
can
you
you hear
fine.
me? Okay, very good.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
I had a couple questions, and maybe possibly just an idea for future discussion. One thing, leaving the United States and going someplace else. Where would you go, and what are some of the things you have to consider when you go there?
Well,
I'm thinking of like what happened with Cuba when Fidel came to Cuba, and a lot of people had to leave Cuba and go to Miami. So I was thinking in those terms.
well, yeah. There was another question you had. You're talking about U.S. governors. Can you hit me with that one? That's a really interesting question.
I'm sorry, I got to remember. U.S. governments. I point out that going. You mentioned the wars, and I was pointing out that the wars are unpredictable. Wars aren't really a very good idea, especially if it's going to be big and hot.
Yeah, yeah, I
They
agree.
just go out of control.
Very easily, yes. No, the one that you talked about, U.S. governors are acting like little Stalins.
Yeah, that's big news. That's big news. I don't know if you hear about it in your part of the world, but we've got a couple of U.S. governors that they've used this emergency, and they're acting like little dictators. It's scary. It's just,
What are they
I'm
doing specifically that's scary? I haven't followed that closely, so I'm curious.
in Hawaii. The police arrested somebody on the beach. They were out of their house. They were on the beach, and like they're going to get sick or cause someone else to get sick. I mean, it's a beach. The wind's blowing. You know,
Mm,
that's ridiculous. But we've had a couple of things like that. The governor of New York, New Jersey, and Michigan, they're like little dictators. It's scary. They're actually scary. Of course, in the United States, we have the First Amendment, freedom of association, freedom of religion, and they've just locked us down. It's
mhm.
they don't seem they don't seem to understand that they're violating the First Amendment. And for Americans, this is real basic, or it should be real basic. And that's what's scary. They don't understand they're violating it. And
Well, yeah. What's interesting is that it's not so much that they're violating it; it's that the majority of people, are allowing it. That's what's interesting.
that's the other scary thing. We're essentially we're being divided into two groups. The one group that goes along with everything they're being told and they believe everything, and the other group that says enough of this
No,
nonsense. Let's get back to life as normal.
yeah, yeah. I actually think that I was really surprised. I thought that this coronavirus would bring the United States together, but it's really interesting that the divide is between the people who want to get back to work and those who just want to stay at home. I find that remarkable. Yeah, and the people who are in favor of the continued lockdown, they are getting fucking harsh. They're like really like if you are against the lockdown, you are in favor of killing people and stuff like that. I mean, crazy talk, right?
That's right.
And
Yes, that's what's kind of scary and weird. Yes.
yes, it is. It's extremely scary, extremely weird, and I I can't believe it. I've been thinking very seriously and doing some fooling around with some writing shit about how there might be a civil war in the United States. And
Well,
when this
that's a
happened,
whole.
yeah,
Yeah,
when this happened, I thought, oh no, this is going to unify everybody, bring everybody together, a big crisis that hurts everybody equally, and this will unify the country. But no, the opposite is happening. And the people are knee-jerk going against everything that Trump says. I personally don't like Trump. I do not like him. I get embarrassed when I see him. He makes me cringe every time I see him talking on the news. I'm not, against him de facto. I just don't like him. Okay. But the thing is, see, there are a lot of people who are against anything he says, no matter how trivial. And like, for instance, he did this interview the other day, or this press briefing, where he mentioned casually something about like injecting, disinfectant or whatever. He didn't mean it literally. It was quite obvious that he didn't mean it literally. He was just sort of like, babbling along. It wasn't like a real thing, but people took him seriously, or said that he was being serious to outrage everybody. It's fucking nuts, Uh, it's like I was saying before, there are people who want a war with China because they think it would be in their best interest. Well, there are people who want to rile up the populace over anything that Trump says. And I think that it's really kind of despicable, but that's the world we're living in now. We just have to roll with it,
I,
But
I would suggest, it's thinking a little differently. There are certain people who want to be in control. They want
yeah,
to tell everybody what to do, and there's a
yes,
certain strain of people who want to be told what to do. And in
yes,
American culture and history, I don't know about the rest of the planet, but in American culture and history, that's a divide. Certain
yes,
people came to America, they wanted to be left alone. They wanted to go out in the wilderness and build their farm and do their thing with their family, and they wanted to be left alone. You got people in the city that they want the government telling them what to do and how to do it. And then you've
yeah,
got these governors who are they want to tell you how to live your life. And
yeah, yeah. What time you can
anyway,
shit
that's
and what time you can pee. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, it's kind of scary and kind of weird. I don't know if you see it in other parts. I don't know if you see that in Europe. I don't know if it's that important
yeah,
in
they
Europe,
do.
but
And here in
it's
Europe, they're
part
all a
of
bunch of.
American
Sorry. I'm here in Europe, okay? And if any of my listeners here, any of you guys are European, it's true. I mean, goddamn, Europeans are cucked out. It's sad. It's a sad sight to behold, but they don't have any kind of they just nod along to what other leadership says and don't say a peep. They don't protest, nothing.
Well, yeah, they
That's
have
kind of sad.
they have a
Hmm?
different history and a different culture, and
Yeah,
yeah. So
it's a sad. It's a sad. But anyway, thanks for being on, Bill. It's great to have you.
okay, very nice. Good talk to you. Thank you.
Talk to you next time. Mike Harton. Mark, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Coach?
Pretty
Um,
good, pretty good. What's up?
so I was actually the one who asked you on Patreon about why are people stupid.
Ah, you are the one.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually just missed the third webinar, so that's why I'm here. So thank you for doing this. Um,
Oh no, my pleasure. And like I said, it's like I don't know what the hell happened. And I'm guessing that somehow I must have inadvertently hit the off switch on the record or something like that. Because on the other times that I've done it subsequent to that, well, the one time I've done it subsequent to the number 3, it came out fine. The recording was no problem at all. Even though I'd done a backup recording, I'm doing a backup recording of this one too, and I'm betting that it'll be fine. The recording off the platform. So, but I just want to say I'm not getting paid by them at all. On the contrary, I have to pay to use this service, but it's a great service. I would highly recommend it to anybody who needs it. Yeah. So anyway, what's on your mind, man?
the question I asked you in the chat was, how can you tell the difference between a hidden insight, like predicting the pandemic, versus a schizophrenic conspiracy, like some of the things you read on 4chan and Zero Hedge? And I ask you this because I read those sites, I do my own research, and I
Sure.
find some pretty interesting things. And I sometimes have a hard time differentiating the difference between, like, okay, this is actually legit, this is something that not many people are seeing, but it's real, versus something that some wacko just made up, and it's just probably some brainwashed bullshit.
Okay. Easy. Occam's razor. That's usually the simplest. The simplest explanation is usually a true one. Okay. Like for instance, here's an example. And some people here might be pissed off at what I'm about to say, but Like the World Trade Center number 9, is it? The building number 9? Yeah.
I think number
Yeah, it
7.
collapsed. Or 7, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah, it fell because of the debris. No way was it demolished. And because two things. See, I lived in Lower Manhattan. Okay, at that time, I used to go to the World Trade Center all the time because, in point of fact, on Tuesdays and Saturdays there'd be a farmers market in the parking area at the feet of one of the Twin Towers, and I would go there all the time for that. And I'd also go there because that was the closest Barnes and Noble. Okay, one of the low buildings right next to the World Trade Center, there was a big Barnes and Noble, and so I'd go there to pick up books, right? And so I knew that area real well. Now that building, I remember it very clearly, and no way they could have demolished it. No way, because there were so many people all the time. And on the other hand, I spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, okay? And I was there once when they demolished some hotel. I mean, let me phrase that. I was there when they were prepping to demolish it. I wasn't actually there. I just wasn't around. I was elsewhere when they finally did demolish it. It took them weeks to set it up to demolish it. And it was like not a non-obvious thing, okay? It wasn't like nobody's noticing, okay? No, it was like a big to-do. And also because they were carrying dynamite and shit, they were scared shitless. The workers were scared shitless of the dynamite, okay? It's not stuff that you just fool around with casually. It's not something that you can hide, okay? So in that situation, for instance, what's more reasonable? That debris from 2 huge airliners crashing into 2 huge buildings that subsequently collapse, that the debris from that will fall on the buildings and bring them down too? Is that more likely? Or hundreds and hundreds of workers put dynamite in some building and waited around for just the right moment to detonate that dynamite. And it took them weeks and weeks, but nobody noticed it in one of the busiest places on earth. Which is more reasonable, okay? And that's the exercise you have to do. You have to imagine what is more reasonable, okay? And looking at all the pros and cons of a situation, no matter how much you want it to be true, okay? Because, like, for instance, at the beginning of this pandemic, I thought to myself, this is like the end of the fucking earth. This could be like something whereby like 3%, maybe 5% of the global population dies off. That's what I was thinking when this shit really got going. I was genuinely scared. I was thinking to myself, how could I get like some antiviral, AIDS medication for my kids? I'm not kidding. I actually made inquiries. I was thinking to myself, if my kids get this virus, well, the AIDS medication, antiviral shit, that would be great, wouldn't it? To stop the viruses that cause COVID-19. I was that scared because that was the information that I was getting at the time. But as more information came in, my worry started to decrease. And then I started to realize, hey, this shit might not be anywhere near as bad as it's been. But you notice that guys who are into conspiracy theories, they never change their story. They just alternate what facts are important for their story. Their story stays the same. And that's a clue, okay? If you're changing your story because the facts are changing, then you're okay. But if your story stays the same, but like the data behind it changes, oh, it wasn't like these guys who did it, was like some secret cabal or something else. And if it's also like people who are like hidden and that you could never verify if it's true or not, then it's bullshit, okay? If an explanation is too complicated, it's probably bullshit. That's basically what I would tell you, Mike.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. And the other thing is, going along with that, is I feel like it's sometimes difficult when you're looking to these things, how you kind of start thinking like, how is no one else seeing this? Like the whole general populace is like, how could so many people just completely ignore something all at once?
I know. A lot of times, okay, this might sound assholish, I warn you, Mike, and warn everybody, okay? A lot of times, smarter people see shit and they're surprised that the dumber people don't get it. They don't realize that the dumber people don't get it because they're dumber. Simple as that, okay? I know that sounds assholish, okay, but it's the truth. when this COVID-19 thing started happening, coronavirus started happening in January, right? I rent an office here in Amsterdam and WeWork, right? And I was telling some of the people there, they were looking at me like I was high. They were looking at me like I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And I'm like, this shit is gonna come. It's gonna be a huge deal. And they were just honestly looking at me like I was just fucking crazy. And they were relatively smart people, you know? And I would show them video and they're like, well, yeah, well, whatever, you know? Because most people are kind of stupid, okay? Even the people that you think might be smart, a lot of them are kind of stupid. Simple as that. They don't take seriously the information in front of them, okay? I don't quite understand it myself, but I've noticed that the smarter people, the more people who are on the ball, they get it quicker. And usually they can't believe that nobody else is getting it, and so they start to question their own judgment.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Because you think to yourself, well, I'm seeing this. Nobody else is seeing it, so I must be wrong. Is that more or less what's happening to you?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, especially you're actually the one that kind of started cluing me in onto the coronavirus, what you said on Twitter. And so throughout the whole past few weeks, I followed your advice, stocking up food. But I always start doubting myself because like no one else I know, no one else is even seeing this or like what's going on. So I'm like thinking, oh, maybe I'm just full of shit. But
yeah, it happens. You know, like for instance, I was thinking that it could be that this gets so serious that there's an interruption in the food supply. Okay. I still think that that's possible. I think it is less likely at this time because it's turning out that this might not be the huge pandemic that it was advertised as. Okay. But you know, when I stocked up on food, I was thinking to myself, well, what's the worst that'll happen here? I bought a shitload of food that eventually I'm going to eat anyway because shit isn't going to spoil. So big deal. You know, I mean, that was bottom line what I was thinking, you know, big deal, you know. So I bought some extra food, and instead of you know, there being a food shortage, I'm going to wind up eating it during the summer or the fall. That's the worst case scenario. My thinking is always that, you know, look at the costs of what you're doing. Okay. Now, insofar as this issue of feeling like you see what's happening and nobody else does, a lot of times this can play against you. And let me give you a specific example. Like in 1999, I was living in Lower Manhattan, and a guy I knew, he went and bought an apartment in the Lower East Side for, it was a one-bedroom apartment, nice enough place, for like $140,000, right? And he was saying, oh man, it's so easy, you know, you just put in like $7,000 and they give you all the rest of the money. And already in 1999, I was thinking, no man, housing is in a bubble. Housing is a total bubble. And I was thinking that in 1999, and it took close to 10 years for the housing bubble to finally pop. And that happens a lot with smart people because they underestimate how long a popular delusion will last. Okay. And that's something that's really painful because you're a smart guy and you see that it's bullshit. But the other people who are not so smart buy into the bullshit. And the bullshit train continues chugging along, and you're not on the train. You're not profiting from it. Okay? That's the thing that has happened to me many times. For example, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was like that $2 or $3 a Bitcoin, right? And I took one look at it, I thought this is bullshit. And for very good reasons. I thought, number one, it's not necessary for any transaction. You can use regular money. So it's not a substitute for money. Okay, number one. It's like a parallel to money, but it's basically like script, and script is worthless because you don't need it. Yeah, number one. And number two, I thought to myself, what's the difference between Bitcoin and any other currency, cryptocurrency? Well, in fact, none whatsoever. They're equally easy to produce. Therefore, the difference is really a marketing question. It's like the difference between Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and RC Cola. They're exactly the same fucking thing. The only difference is the marketing. One's Coke, one's Pepsi, one's RC. But is it qualitatively different? No, it's the same. Sugared water with with coca flavor, right? And so I thought to myself, well, Bitcoin is bullshit because it's not necessary for anything, and it can be replaced by any other cryptocurrency. And I thought that everybody else would see that, but nobody saw that. They still don't see it. They still buy the shit, even though it's fucking worthless. Even though now, so many people are saying, oh, it's a store of value, man. I mean, like if the dollar goes down, it'll still be valuable. Oh yeah, what happened now? Fucking shit collapsed with the stock market, and it goes to show that Bitcoin is bullshit. But me as an intelligent investor, I thought that it was bullshit, and all the other people ran to it. They bought into the bullshit. That happens all the time, and it's one of the costs of being smarter. I hate to put it that way because it makes me sound like a complete asshole, but that's the truth. You see, Mike?
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is what you should do, and this is what I do now. I say, well, this is what I think, and what would a person with 20 IQ points less than me think? I swear to God, I do that.
Yep.
Okay, I swear to God, because a lot of times, it's when you think of what the dumber people are going to do that you can see what's going to happen. Does this make sense?
Yeah, that's actually pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's depressing, right? And because what happened? Please tell me your experience with this situation.
Well, I love doing research about all this bullshit because I'm not one to just go along what the government or whatever stuff education facilities say what you should believe. So I always do my own research, and I always come across these what our conspiracy theorists are like saying, like, oh, this is all these people are controlling us, which some of it I do believe. However, I do start questioning, like, oh, am I going too far? Am I just going insane about, like, I'll give some examples. Like, I've looked into 9/11. I don't think what you said, like, I think it happened and stuff.
Okay.
On stuff like the Holocaust, basically all the Red Scare and communism. So I looked into that kind of stuff, but I always start questioning myself, am I going too insane? Pretty much.
Well, yeah, that's something you should guard against. Okay. Look, a lot of times it's easier to prove the negative. For example, a lot of people say that Neil Armstrong never walked on the moon, that no American astronaut, no astronaut period, ever walked on the moon, that Stanley Kubrick filmed the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. There's this really great video by a guy called Collins, okay? It's called, I forget the name of it exactly, but it's like his most popular video, a guy called Collins. He's like an older guy. And in the video, he says that he's gonna prove how they did land on the moon, okay? And he proves it in a very elegant way, because he says at the beginning of his video, he says, I don't know if Neil Armstrong landed on the moon or not. I know that they didn't fake it, okay? And the reason they didn't fake it, he explains, is that in 1969, the technology didn't exist to fake it. And he goes into an explanation of the photography of it, which is really interesting, okay? And he goes into a lot of basics. I mean, I produced movies, I directed movies, so I know a little bit about cinematography and photography. And so everything he's saying is right on the money, right? He talks about how, for instance, it's impossible for them to have, faked the pictures of the astronaut on the moon, because there's not a light source strong enough that they could have put far enough to have created the shadows that appear, okay? And stuff like that, that's like, yeah, fucking A. And at the end of it, he says, I don't know if they faked the moon landing, but I don't know if they went to the moon or not, but I know that they did not fake it, okay? And the video proves it really, really elegantly, okay? And it's absolutely 100% true. I mean, and anybody who knows even the most basics of photography and video and cinematography will tell you, yeah, it's absolutely on the money. And so a lot of times you have to look at that. Indirectly you can see that things are not that. And you also have to notice something too. Life tends to be very messy, okay? if somebody claims that there's a tidy solution to a problem, it's probably not true. Okay.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we want there to be a more profound explanation than the explanation that is actually true. For example, it's really, how can I put it, like almost annoying to think that John Kennedy was shot by some loser, like just some random loser who got lucky. It's
Yes.
really fucking annoying. But that's more or less what happened. It's not more complicated than that. And we want it to have been like a bigger reason that the FBI and the CIA and Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson were all in it together to kill Kennedy, right?
Yeah.
It would make like a better explanation, but sometimes it's the, some loser just got it into his head and took a couple of lucky shots and boom, we're done,
Sometimes we
And,
want the more entertaining answer.
yeah, exactly. And so the thing is, you have to guard against that. You have to guard against having the more entertaining answer, because the more entertaining answer will be more entertaining, but it's not going to be true.
Yep.
There's this great novel called American Tabloid by James Elroy. It's a great novel. Okay, it's a fantastic novel. It gives a whole conspiracy theory about Kennedy, right? But
Yeah.
the fucker says right on the front page, a novel. It's just for fun. It's not real. Okay. I mean, he's interested in other things. It's a very profound book. It's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it. American Tabloid. Go check it out. But
Will do.
yeah, but the point is, just because it's a sexy explanation doesn't mean it's true. Usually, the true explanation is much more mundane and trivial and stupid.
Yeah.
Napoleon probably lost the Battle of Waterloo because he had really bad hemorrhoids and he couldn't mount a horse to see the battlefield. That's one of the more likely explanations of why he lost that particular battle. And it sounds like, what the fuck are you telling me? Hemorrhoids? Is that why fucking Napoleon lost at Waterloo and all that? Yeah, hemorrhoids. Yeah. Not, some big conspiracy or some spy shit or anything like that, or, some Marie Antoinette or whatever his wife's name was, I forget at this point. But you see what I'm saying? Sometimes it's mundane and you have to accept it. Yeah. Okay. So let me move on. Great talking to you, Mike. Take it easy.
Yep. You too.
Let me scroll down. Shane Rogers. Shane, you there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going good, Coach. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah. What's up?
Hey, so I'm. Which question would you like me to get into? Because I think I'm more likely to want to go with the first question about the. What was that?
Which is it?
So how do you think the crisis will, like, do you think this crisis will collapse the credit or the repo market?
I have no idea about the repo market. Okay. Repo market is a rehypothecation market. That's the overnight monies that are lent between financial institutions and big pension funds in order to cover their cash flows overnight. I have no idea about that. That's a complicated subject that I don't know shit about. Okay. It's like plumbing in the apartment. I know it works. I don't know how it works. It's like magic to me, and I don't mess with it. You see?
Okay.
So the repo market, I don't know.
Okay. So
go ahead.
So then let's go to the second question then. How do you think that this will affect the auto market? Like, do you think the auto prices will fall first before real estate prices?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because what will happen is that, people are more, used car auto prices are much more sensitive to demand than real estate prices. Okay. So you're going to have multiple things going on insofar as the auto market is concerned. Number one, it's going to take a while for automakers to get back online and start producing automobiles. Number two, because of the unemployment, which is going to be massive. I mean, if you tell me with the first Friday of May is going to be when the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases its April numbers, right? If you tell me that the U.S. unemployment is 25%, I would not be surprised. Okay, so because of that unemployment, nobody's going to buy any car, new or used, and so the auto market is going to be flatlined for quite a while. And there's something else that's going to be happening. Because people are in a low demand environment, they're not spending money, they're going to get used to it. Okay?
Yeah.
And because of their economic insecurity, they're going to be very reluctant to spend money. Okay?
Right.
And so I do not think that big ticket items are going to rebound anytime soon. Okay? And that includes real estate. I think also that because of this, this work from home thing that companies are going to realize that they can easily do, they're going to cut back on their commercial real estate. So commercial real estate prices are going to tank. Commercial real estate prices are also going to tank because of so many restaurants and small shops that are never going to reopen because they're broke. So I think that I'm mixing up several things. I'm mixing up the car market with the housing market and the
Right.
real estate market. But I think all of them are going to suffer deflation. And it's just going to be a spiral. And I think that one, the car market and the real estate market, are going to be asset classes that are going to be very, very hard to kickstart and rebound their prices to the previous levels. Okay.
Okay.
I think that actually we might see the smart thing for all these big car companies to do is to cut back drastically on their output and hope that they can weather through the next few years plural, because historically that's how companies have survived in previous depression eras. They have radically cut back on their production and just try to keep their head above water until the next decade, right?
Right.
That's how it happened in the past, and any company that tries to do that, to cut back and not rehire all the workers, but just produce fewer workers, they're the ones that survive. And so I think those companies that do that, they're the ones who are going to survive, even as their stock prices are going to continue to go down because their revenues are going to go down because there are going to be less valuable companies. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. That's deflation. Okay. That's what happens with a big company. They start cutting workers and cutting the amount of units that they produce, and they basically shrink as companies. But they survive. They don't go bankrupt. That's what General Motors did during the Depression. That's what Ford did. That's what Chrysler did. The companies that didn't do that, like Duesenberg. Duesenberg was the U.S. Luxury car manufacturer. They kept on producing like there was no tomorrow, and they went bankrupt. The other companies, the big companies, Ford, GM, they shrank to survive. Okay, and so in such a situation, you're going to have car companies that produce fewer cars, and they're going to produce cheaper cars. And of course, as they produce cheaper cars and fewer cars at that, those cheaper cars are going to compete in the used car market. And so you're not going to have luxury cars.
Right.
Not anymore. I'm guessing that Tesla would go under, but everybody's been thinking that Tesla is going to go under, and it still hasn't gone under. Okay, so
Yeah.
who knows? I mean,
Well, they might go.
Elon
They
Musk
might
is
go.
to keep
Well,
that
they might
ship.
go under just because if oil prices continue to keep falling and people kind of realize, oh shoot, gas prices are a lot cheaper. Well, I might as well just stick with my gas powered car just because gas prices are cheaper. Do you think that might be a possibility?
Sure, but I think that would be a marginal explanation. I think the much more obvious explanation is that Tesla cars are fucking expensive. You're dropping 100 grand on a sedan, right? That's a lot of money, especially if you don't have any kind of credit to buy that shit. You have to pay it cash. Fuck that. I mean, if you lease a car, well, okay. I mean, your payments, how much for a $100,000 car? How much would your lease payments be? I'm guessing. I have no idea. I've never actually looked at leasing a car, but say if you told me $1,500 a month, I'd believe you. Okay, so say it's $1,500. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah, $1,500, but 100,000 just on the table. That's too much money. Nobody's going to pay that. And if people are worried about their jobs or being able to afford a $1,500 car payment, they're not going to buy it either. So you see what I'm saying? I don't think that Tesla is going to make it because of the cost of the cars, not because of the units that it's trying to sell.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see another? Do you think we'll be bailing out any of the auto companies like we did last time, or do you think the situation's gonna be different?
I think that they're going to continue to bail out, which I think is a huge mistake. Yeah, because it makes people sloppy and lazy, and makes them not face the hard decisions that have to be faced. And that's a personal and moral, but I think that in the long run, it's bad for the country, the bailout companies. They should just, make it on their own, sink or swim on their own. See, it's not the job of the government to ensure that Ford Motor Company is still around, or General
Right.
Motors or whatever. That's not the job of the government, okay? It's the job of the leadership of those companies. But see, you have this situation of moral hazard where everybody's gotten used to the fact that the government bailing them out. And so they're going to do more bailouts, and God knows what that is going to have as an effect on the wider economy. Nobody knows. This is uncharted territory, And I'm going to be talking about this a lot more tomorrow when I do the regular webinar. But we're moving into areas where we have no fucking idea what's going to happen. Okay, and so you want to make sure that your fingers don't get caught in the lid. You don't get caught in the door frame, because anything can happen. And any kind of investment at this time is fucking insane, because you don't know what's going to happen, because none of this is predictable. Okay, if you had told me, 2 weeks ago that the price of oil was going to go negative, I would have said you're high. I would have said you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're a fool. You're an idiot. Blah blah blah. And well, here we are. It sounds fucking impossible, but then the impossible becomes quotidian. That's we just saw negative prices for oil. Okay, the explanation was very reasonable. I hope you all understood the explanation. It's very simple, but at the same time, it's like completely unforeseen. It's like beyond black swan. It's like a multicolored silver swan. I mean, it's like that fucking crazy, but that's where we're at. And so investing now in anything, fucking crazy. I am scared shitless of investing in anything at this time, okay? Because I have no idea what will happen. At this time, to tell you the honest truth, my principal fear is the banks where I have my money parked. I don't want them to go bankrupt,
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm worrying, are all these things that the Federal Reserve are doing, is it going to turn to hyperinflation? I don't know. It's so many variables. That's the problem. Okay, so there's no answer. Yeah, go ahead.
One last question, and then I'll have you get to the other callers. So what do you think what it would take for the economy to bounce back?
That's a good question. I'm thinking. Okay, for the economy to bounce back to the way things were before this whole situation, barring a time machine, right?
Right.
It would have to be, number one, that the vast majority of people, I'm talking 95% of the people, are absolutely positively sure that they can't catch coronavirus and they can go back to work like everything's wonderful. That ain't gonna happen, okay? But I mean, that would be one of the preconditions, okay? Because there is a substantial portion of people. I don't know how you would quantify this number of people, but a substantial number of people who believe that this coronavirus shit is absolutely lethal, and they are terrified of it, and they don't want to step out of their house for fear of getting it. Okay, and it's a non-trivial number of people. It's not like 5 or 6. It's millions who believe this. That's why they're locked up. They've been convinced by the media, the leadership, everybody, that if they step out, they're going to catch this shit and die. Okay, and so those people, to get them out is going to take a long time. Okay.
Yeah.
Then the next issue becomes, how do you roll back on all the bankruptcies of all the small businesses? And that is just not possible. okay? Especially come the 1st of May, that, that's the next date for major outlays, rent, mortgage, interest payments on whatever loans they have outstanding. And a lot of companies are going to miss these payments and they're going to basically be bankrupt, okay? And so how do you roll back on all those bankruptcies? And the answer is you can't. It's just not possible, okay? And so all of this leads me to the conclusion that there is no way to get back to the status quo ante. There is no way to get back to quote unquote normal.
Right.
Normal is gone, okay? Because there will be a substantial number of people, a non-trivial minority, 20%, 40%, I don't know, but right around that amount, 20 to 40% of the people who think that if they step out of their home and try to resume normal life, they will catch coronavirus and die. Whether they're justified or not, it's not important whether you and I think that they're justified. It's what they believe because it's been hammered into their heads. They have lost 6 weeks of their lives stuck indoors. So they believe this. In fact, they have to believe it, or else those 6 weeks will have been a colossal and complete waste of time, and potentially a lot of them will have lost their jobs and or businesses over this mistake. So they need to believe this, okay? So those people, since they are a substantial minority, like I said, 20 to 40%, those people, they are never going to stick their nose out of their house for at least another month or two, okay? And the rest of the economy, even if it were to start up again, there's so many small businesses that are beyond saving that it's over. Here in Amsterdam, right? In Holland, they have last year they had a $14 billion surplus, government surplus, and they spent all that money to shore up everybody. Everybody here is getting money and handouts, and they're all doing great, okay? And this is the one European country where the high taxes are worth it because the fuckers take care of their own, right? But the thing is, see, even so, I see every day when I walk to my office, I see like there's this place here on the just before Kalverstraat at the Dam where they leave garbage, right? And I'd say every 3 days or so, I see the debris of a closed restaurant, waiting to get picked up by the garbage truck, right? Like old chairs or plates or whatever debris from a restaurant or a shop or store that closed down and they just stripped everything from the store, okay? Because here where I live is like a bunch of stores and restaurants and all the rest of it because right by the main train station, okay? And so it's where, lots of tourists, lots of people, it's a fun place and that's why I'm living here. And, every 2 days, and this is a place that's tidy, that's got its shit tight, okay? They have money from the government going to people and businesses to keep them afloat during this lockdown, and they're shutting down. So I can't even imagine what it's like in places like New York, Boston, San Francisco, LA, Texas, all those small businesses, they're all shutting down and they can't be reopened, So we're never going to go back to normal. Yeah, it's a long way of saying that we're never going to go back to normal. There is no way, because your question was, how can we go back to normal? And the answer is, we can't. Yeah. Sorry for being a downer, man.
No, it's. I just need an explanation to people, to anybody who might be thinking, oh, yeah, we'll definitely kick back. The economy will bounce back. The stocks will be back to normal. It's like, well, even if that's even possible, what would it take? And I don't see that ever happening. So realistically, what would it take? I don't see that happening.
Okay, let me put down everybody's hand. Wait, oops. Everybody's hand is down. Does anybody have a reason or an explanation as to why the economy will just bounce back? And I'll pull you in. Anybody have a reason why this is all gonna just bounce back instantly? Okay, I'm spotting Chris O. Chris O, I'll pull you in. Chris O, you there?
Yeah, hi, Coach.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. 2 reasons why the economy might bounce back. The first one is, as you just mentioned, the war effort. If that happens, then we have all sorts of opportunities for kickstarting a factory and putting back people to work or sending people out, overseas.
Good reason. A plus, Chris. That's a good fucking reason. Yeah, war. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I just had to say that was a good reason. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah. Go ahead. And what's the other reason?
That might be reason enough for some people up there to make that call, because there may not be any other reason. But if there is another reason, is what you've been talking about a lot. It's about government printing money, taking out loans, borrowing abroad more than it could ever pay back, and then trying to, against all economical logic, to give bailouts to citizens directly or to business to kick them all back to work.
Mhm.
That is probably more likely that will happen. It will probably backfire because, as you said, too many bankruptcies, too low demand, and all these bailouts will probably collapse anyway in a year or two.
Yeah, that's my thinking. That it's just postponing the inevitable. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. My thinking also is that if I were broke, and somebody handed me $1,200, I wouldn't fucking spend it, or I'd spend as little as possible. I'd husband that money and keep it tight in my fist, and just spend it on the absolutely essentials, food, and nothing else. That's my thinking. You agree?
Absolutely. And if I can just suggest a kind of a combination of these situations. The first step is to try to give bailouts, give money out, print money. And then, if that's no longer affordable, then have a conflict with China, and use all the Chinese assets abroad, freeze them, nationalize them, and use that to pay back all the loans.
Shane, what do you think of that answer?
I don't see that as being. I don't see the public getting behind that. That's one thing, and there's too many companies. There's no way you're going to be able to save all of them. I mean, you could maybe save like a couple, like a handful of big ones, but it's just I think we live in an age right now where we have information all the time thrown at us, and I just don't see that happening. You could probably get away with that if we back in the old days when we didn't have the internet, where you had a media that could really control the narrative and people were glued to their television sets and they ate up everything that the news cycle was spitting at them. But not anymore. There's too much.
But you don't think a war would solve all the problems?
I don't think so at all. I think more people are. I think more people are getting more information, because you have to think about it like this: when we went to war when we went to quote unquote these wars in the Middle East, let's just go back to, like, say, with the war in Iraq. A lot of people were in support of the war with Iraq because there wasn't a lot of information about it. They sold us on the idea that there was weapons of mass destruction. The media told it over and over and over again, and it wasn't until when the internet started taking off that information started getting passed around really quickly that people just realized that it was not that was a huge mistake.
Hang on a second, I want to bring in Mike here, because Mike points out something very true here. He made a comment, and I want him to say it live. Mike, you're on. You there?
Hello?
Yeah, hit me, because I know what you said, and I want you to say it because I have an answer for it.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
So early in your presentation, you said that that starting a war with China will not restart the economy. You said you called Paul, what's his name? Paul Krugman a warmonger, yet you just said that this is true. That what's up with that?
Oh, no. Okay, because it's perfectly valid. Because what I'm thinking here is not what I think would restart the economy. It's rather, I was thinking from the point of view of leadership. That a war from the point of view of leadership would be the way to restart the economy. Okay, if all else fails. Because I personally do not think that we will ever see normal again, period. war, no war, nothing. I think that a war will not restart the economy for a variety of reasons, but principally because assuming if it were possible that nuclear weapons were not used in this conflict, right? Combat tempo would be so fast in today's modern warfare that there would not be enough time to restart economies, to restart the American economy, because weapon systems are too complicated and combat tempo is too fast for that kind of war to trickle out to the country and, you know, trickle down economics like in World War I. It's just not possible. Okay. That reason, number one. Number two, I think that the danger of a nuclear war is astronomically high if war with China happened. And number three, I don't think that the United States would win, quite frankly. And the hard as that may be to believe, I do not think that they would beat the Chinese or beat them in any kind of meaningful sense.
Even with the largest military in the world?
Nothing to be won, to tell you the truth. But okay, all that being said, I don't think that the American economy would be restarted by a war. But I was thinking when I was very excited about the answer that that Chris O gave, I thought to myself that that would be the explanation that a lot of policy guys would be thinking, that a war would be the one. I was sort of like shifting my point of view. But looking at it objectively, no, I do not think a war would get everything back on track. But I think it's something that policy types are thinking about. Yeah.
You don't think the U.S. will win?
No.
No?
Because there's nothing to be won. Okay.
But even like win the war or come out like better than they did going into it. What do you mean?
Either. Okay. Because like a war today, yeah, war today, the equipment, the material is incredibly expensive, and it's not easy to replace. Number one, and the speed of warfare is incredibly intense. Okay. Number two, if you were to go to war with China, what would it be over? What you want to conquer Chinese territory, or the Chinese want to invade America? You know, take over California, some shit like that. What is there to be won? I mean, it's an obvious question. Does the United States want to go to war and potentially lose thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of troops, and perhaps millions of citizens with a nuclear exchange over Taiwan? I mean, realistically, because that would be the reason for it, right? Because we're defending our great ally, Taiwan. Who gives a shit about Taiwan? I mean, no offense to any Taiwanese listening, but, you know, come on, right? So what would be the point of a war? There's be no point. There's nothing to be won. What, to replace the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing? That's insane. It's impossible.
But that's not the point of war.
What is the point of war?
Diversionary war. It's to bring people's attention.
A diversionary war.
Any war has been diversionary.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, yes, there was access to oil and resources in Iraq, but the whole point is to create diversion from the problems at home, and there are existing and growing problems at home. If, for whatever reason.
Well, actually, Chris, that kind of diversionary war is actually a very, very new thing. It actually started with the Argentines and the dictator General Galtieri in 1981, 82, when he invaded the Falkland Islands. Before that, wars were fought for real. They were actually fought not to divert attention. Galtieri was actually the first in the modern sense of going to war for an actual diversion. Okay, before that, people went to war for territory.
And absolutely, and that's why Thatcher won the election right after. And if Trump, for whatever reason, might think he might lose the election, he might do just that to come out on top, just like Thatcher did in 81 or 82.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it would be Trump's decision to go to war. I think it would be the industrial military complex or the intra-agency complex, they call themselves, to go to war. Yeah, I think that because from what you're saying, okay, I do not agree that a war would pull out the U.S. economy from the grips of the Depression, but I think that a lot of people in the intra-agency and the leadership classes in the United States think that it would, and therefore would advocate for war and push for it very stridently. You see what I'm thinking? Because I understand what Mike was his critique of what I was saying, of saying that, hey, you just said that war isn't going to pull out the American economy from a hole. It won't. But I think that policy guys would think that it will.
Absolutely, and then you're right in the sense that there's no longer war effort where people go back in factories and we start building planes and tanks to be sent abroad. That's history. The point is to create a diversion, to be able to nationalize and freeze foreign assets here, and there are plenty, as
Yeah,
well as
I agree.
To once obviously companies, American and Western companies, can no longer produce offshore, then you can start that same production for higher labor costs and whatnot here. Start a war abroad so you have an excuse to nationalize assets and to bring back forcibly against economic supply and demand, bring it back here. Start producing things here again. Imagine that all of a sudden all those labor was outsourced to China, now has to be produced domestically because we're at war with that country.
I don't think that would work.
You don't think that would work? Well, then
No,
this is the. Go ahead.
No, I don't think that would work because again, we're in the information age. Like there was a time where like a short period, I think it was like early last year, where we were considering going to war in Venezuela over their oil.
Yep.
And because of that information got passed out that we were just going to go to war with them just because of the oil, that it was a diversion oil, that it was going to be a diversion war, that people started putting pressure on politicians to pretty much be like, no, we have information because of the internet that are proving that you guys are doing this for no reason other than getting the oil. And they put pressure on politicians, and the politicians were like, backed out of that, and we're like, okay, we're not going to go to war with Venezuela.
Yeah, so, but like Mike pointed out, people tend to do really stupid shit, and smarter people, such as ourselves. I'm not blowing sunshine up anybody's ass, but I'm just stating facts. Smarter people such as ourselves see that it's bullshit, but the average person doesn't, and they're like, yeah, China bad, China coronavirus, China kill Chinese,
Yeah, but also you have to consider that it's also the loud minority. It's also the loud minority, not the silent majority. That makes the difference.
Yeah. So that's also true. But unfortunately, the squeak wheel gets the grease. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if it does, you also have to understand that there's also corporate interests with that as well. So if you have a lot of companies that say no, we don't want to mess with China because we have business interests with them, they're not going to go to war with them.
Well, look, all this stuff is academic. I mean, I'm gonna mute you guys. It's great talking to the three of you.
May I ask a question? Yeah.
Go ahead.
This question links to your discussion about real estate. I mean, it's not a secret that there's a lot of foreign investment, mostly Chinese investment in real estate abroad.
Yep.
For example, in Canada, housing is unaffordable in Toronto or Vancouver precisely because of foreign, realistically Chinese investments, whether it's into investment property or rentals, or a few of them that actually live here. There are whole neighborhoods in the US and California or Canada that are just empty housing because they were bought up by Chinese money.
Yep.
Given the collapse, in real estate, as well as potential conflict, may it happen or not, what do you think will happen to the real estate sector based on the fact that it's been inflated not only through domestic over demand, but also by foreign investment?
But you're positing too many things. You're basically saying, well, what if the Chinese properties are nationalized or stripped from them somehow?
No, this is just a new question. This is like, there's no conflict right now. A lot of real estates and properties in Canada, US, and Australia particularly are overinflated due to foreign investment, usually as a kind of investment or rental properties. How does this current economic crisis, not talking about any potential military conflict, how does the current crisis impact these properties? I mean, will the prices drop to a level that it's affordable for middle class Canadians or Americans to buy them, or will it remain overinflated because of foreign investment?
Well, that's a good question, but it'll depend on two different factors. Number one, see, prices will drop as people try to exit their properties because they need the cash for whatever reason, or they can no longer afford to pay the mortgage. Now, prices will drop. Does that mean that the mortgage issuers will continue to be as easy as they have been, as easy as they were in the quote unquote normal times or the good old days? Because if they are not, then the prices will collapse even more because there won't be any buyers who can afford the houses. And think about it. If you have mortgage providers who are happy to, give, I don't know, 95% financing on a house, all of a sudden they're unwilling to do so, or they are only willing to provide, say, 85%, or whatever, or tighten their guidelines, their policies for loans. Doesn't matter why or how, right? But if that happens, then there are going to be fewer people who are willing to buy, because there are going to be fewer people who are able to buy because they don't qualify or they don't have enough of a down payment, right? And so that will push prices lower still. Now, that's one side of the equation. Now, if there is a market with a pronounced subset of units that are owned by foreign buyers, Chinese buyers, and these people need the cash because back home they have money needs, whatsoever those money needs might be, then there's going to be a separate downward pressure on prices. You see, they're going to be completely separate, because downward prices, the foreign buyers would push prices lower if they just need to get out of the property as quickly as possible. And here's a key issue. Foreign buyers, because they are foreign, likely bought the property cash.
Yeah.
No mortgage loan, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a mortgage, say for the sake of argument, to make the math simple, you bought a property for $300,000 and you financed, again, just I'm making up numbers, 270,000 of those. You put down 30,000 and you got a mortgage for 270,000, right? Now you can't afford to sell it for less than 270,000 or however much you owe on the mortgage loan. Let's say for the sake of this conversation, 270,000. 270,000, i.e. a 10% discount, is the best you can do, because if you sell it for less, you're gonna wind up owing money that you don't have, right? So 270 is your limit. But if you bought it all cash for 300,000, you can afford to sell it for 250. You can afford to sell it for 200. Okay?
Yeah.
If a foreign buyer wants to sell, he's going to negatively affect the prices of that particular area far more than somebody who has a mortgage on it. Because the guy with a mortgage will never, or will avoid, selling the property and be underwater on it.
Yeah.
Okay? Whereas the foreign buyer, he doesn't have that problem. He'll take the loss. He won't like it, of course. Nobody likes taking a loss. But if he needs the cash desperately enough, fuck it, he'll take the loss. See?
Yeah.
And that will not happen with the guy with the mortgage. And that's why there's a big difference between a foreign buyer who has to pay all cash and a local buyer who has a mortgage. And that's why the foreign buyer is much more dangerous than the local buyer.
And there are entire sectors in the US, especially in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, where all new construction is destined for foreign buyers.
Asian buyers, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like, you guys, what do you think? Mike, Steve, what do you think? Fucked or
I think
not
so.
fucked?
Oh, they're fucked.
Yeah.
Shane, rather, sorry.
Yeah. I would say that they are definitely, they are fucked.
Yeah, because see, like Shane, Mike, and Chris and me, we all live in the same neighborhood, right? But you dumb suckers took out mortgages, and I paid cash because I'm a foreigner from China, and I sell for half the price. So what's the price now of your houses? See? Because
Yeah.
in real estate listings, you always go by the what's the name of that when the comparables. You always go with the comparables, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The value of
Yeah.
of every property will actually go down.
Thanks, Coach. Looking
Yeah,
forward
thanks,
to seeing you
Coach.
all.
I
Thanks,
hadn't
guys.
thought of that. That's a really interesting conversation. Okay, I'm going to kick you three guys out. It was lovely talking with all three of you, but I want to talk to other people. Not because you guys are not wonderful guys, rather, that sounded awful of me. I meant in the sense that I want to give the opportunity to others to ask as well. I'm putting everybody's hand down. Who here has never asked a question and wants to? Raise your hand. Who has never asked a question and wants to? Mike, I already talked to you. Yeah. Okay, Nick Haley here. Nick and, oh, yeah, I'm going to hit you, Nick, and then I'm going to hit Pankaj. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Nick, you there? Nick, I unmuted you, man. You there? Oh, fix your mic, man. I'll hit you in just a little bit. Pankaj, I'm so sorry. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Pankaj, is that how you pronounce it? Hello, Pankaj, are you there? Hello, Pankaj. Pankaj Tiwari. Pankaj, I guess we'll catch him later. And I'll try Nick again to see if he fixed his microphone. Nick, you got to fix your microphone. Okay, you got to fix your microphone. Let me get to Roberto Flores. Roberto is one of the guys who I think came up with this thing. So, Roberto, you there? Roberto, Jesus, you guys have to fix your microphones, okay? Remember, I'm happy to talk to you guys, but I can't talk to you guys if you don't fix your mics. Stoyan Drandarov. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Stoyan,
Hey,
you there?
Coach. Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Great talking to you. Pretty good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'd say so. Not that bad considering.
Yeah, well, the thing is, see, all I need now are hookers and cocaine, and I'd be good. Yeah? You got any?
Yes, not really. Too bad, unfortunately.
Oh, Jesus Christ, you're a disappointment. Okay, what's up, man?
Okay. I just wanted to see your opinion on this because I was wondering this myself. On this entire crisis, what lessons do you think that people in general will learn, if any, really?
That's a good question. The longer this continues, okay, I think that people are going to learn. No, let me rephrase it. The more painful this becomes, the more lessons they learn, because that's the way of human nature. Okay, you can hear something very sensible and reasonable told to you 50 times, but you're only really going to learn it if you experience it painfully, because that's how people are. I think that they're going to realize that they need a lot less than they thought they did to live happily. I think that a lot of people are going to realize that they are not with the people they want to be. I think that psychologically, a lot of people are not going to get through this, and a lot of other people are going to be very impatient with these crybabies. It depends where you look on it, okay? This is traumatic. And for me personally, okay, I'm having a great time. I'm not gonna fucking lie. This is, I made boatloads of cash, right? I'm doing these webinars that I'm really enjoying. The two things that I'm really regretting is that I don't have any kind of a social life. I'm missing people that I want to talk to and shoot the shit with and just hang out with, number one. And I am really upset because I am not with my small children, whom I miss very, very much. I just want to be with them and hug them, and I miss them terribly. And that is unfortunate, but I don't have any money problems. I don't have any health problems. I think I've got it already, quite frankly, as I have mentioned before. But a lot of people are not in such good situations, right? A lot of them are in very bad situations. A few health-wise, and that's a tragedy, but I think that psychologically, this depression that's coming, right? People are going to be unemployed for a long time. And that's going to be traumatic because all these small companies, small businesses that shut down and fired everybody, well, all those people have to find work. once the economy starts up again. They're going to look for work for a long time, and they're not going to find it. And they're going to be incredibly unhappy. And the people who do find employment, they're going to find that their wages are going to be a lot lower for obvious reasons. See, because if I'm an employer hiring somebody new in this post-COVID lockdown environment with all these unemployed people, I'm going to be able to offer much lower salaries than I used to. And people are going to be like happy with earning half of what they had before, of what they were earning before. And so people are going to be just a lot more frugal and a lot more careful with their money. They're not going to throw it around. And this is going to be just one more ingredient for this just deflation of the whole thing. Just think of it like a balloon that it was popped, but it didn't explode. No, it's like one of those balloons that, you know, it got the hole and just started like losing air, and just like, you know, the skin of it got all leathery and sad. You know how a balloon collapses like that? You know what I'm talking about now?
Yep.
Yeah, like that. Specifically, how it'll affect people, it'll affect each person individually. What about yourself? How is it affecting you, if you don't mind my asking?
No, it's no problem. That's a good question, actually. I'd say it's in a lot more of a, how should I say? I reflect a bit more, let's just say right now, basically on things you have, and it makes you realize future is not always as pretty as it seems, basically, from my point of view. And it also allows me, at least some of the free time I have now, to actually push into stuff I want to do, basically. So there are some realizations, there are some good things, but I was wondering, yeah, especially for the in general, basically.
Well, in my own case, and I think that it should be like for everyone, you start asking yourself, what do you really want to do? And why aren't you going after that? I think that that's this pause in everyone's life. Because the vast majority of you people listening to me now, you're going to be fine. You're not going to die, okay? And it's turning out that very few people are going to die of this relatively to the entire population. And to those people who pass away, it's a tragedy, and I don't mean any kind of disrespect. But to us who will be alive, we have to think to ourselves, you know, what kind of life are we living? Is it the life that we want to be living? And what you say about reflection is very true, that you should be reflecting on what sort of life you want to be living. What do you want to be doing? What would give you real satisfaction and happiness? I've been thinking about this quite a bit myself, to tell you the truth. And I'm not prepared at this time to share my conclusions with you all, but it's certainly given me a lot to think about as to how I want to spend the years that I have remaining. Well, what do I want to achieve? I'm 52. I don't know how old you are, Stoyan.
I'm 25.
Okay, well, you got 27 years ahead of me, man. But the point is, see, however many years more you might have, they're limited, okay? In my own case, I think to myself that I have like maybe 18 more years that are productive, okay? That I can really deliver. Maybe less, actually. I'm 52. Maybe by the time I'm 65, that'll be that. So, okay, a dozen years that I can really bring it. And after that, it's just going to be a slow fade. And I'm already fading now, I'm realizing. Although I have to admit that even though I'm fading physically and I'm no longer as sharp as I used to be, I'm noticing that I'm a lot more clever. I'm smarter in a lot of ways that I wasn't before, but that's for another conversation. The point is, I want to be thinking, and I think that you all, and I want to leave you all with this thought, that you should be thinking about the life that you have been living up to this point, and ask yourself, what's the thing that you really want to do? What is the thing that you really want out of life? The thing that you truly want, not that you've been told that you should want, not the career that your parents said that would be a good career, or the job or business that your spouse said would be the good career or job or whatever business. No, what do you want to do? What would make you truly happy? Because see, ultimately, this is the only life we get. There isn't going to be another one. And now that we have this pause, now it would be smart to use this time to reflect and answer those questions. And it's different for each person. But I think that it's worthwhile to use this time now to answer that question. I don't know if you agree, Stoyan.
Yeah, no, I agree. It seems to be such a time,
Because
especially.
what do you want to do?
Yeah, of course.
I'm asking, what do you want to do?
For me, uh, well, that's as I said, a good question, but I would mostly say become a better version of myself, really, because I know I can do more. So basically, just iron out, or rather, push my strengths forward and try to work on my weaknesses. Things like that, I'd say. Specifically, of course, there are some business ideas and such, and professional work and such, but it's.
Well, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking about the thing that I most enjoyed doing in my life was directing movies. I didn't particularly care about like the press, the media attention that's necessary. It's just marketing. I didn't care about like parties or shit like that. I enjoyed working the day-to-day grind of a film shoot. And I'm realizing that I chased money and did other things and did other things that interest me actually. It wasn't just really chasing money. That's being unfair. A lot of things that I pursued after I directed movies were things that I thought were cool or interesting. But I never had such personal satisfaction as leading a film crew. Not producing movies. I did that, and producing movies was great, and I made a ton of money off that. But it wasn't as much fun as directing movies, of like the daily grind of having a shot list and getting up bright and early to be with the crew and shoot shit and the day-to-day problems of a film production. That's the thing I most miss, to tell you the truth. And yeah, and I'm basically making up my mind that that's what I want to return to. Yeah, because it was just so much fun, and I miss that. And I think also to myself that in my life I have not had enough fun. I know that sounds kind of childish, okay, to say, oh, my life hasn't been that much fun, but I mean in the sense of just enjoyment, and I think to myself, well, how can I do that? How could I enjoy my life as opposed to sort of like just living it, just grinding out my days? Because when I say like grinding out a day in a production, that was fun. I mean, when I was doing it, I had a shit ton of fun. I felt all my cylinders were on fire. I mean, I felt like I was really just the fullest version of myself. And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like the superficial aspects or elements of directing movies. It was the actual job of directing that was fun,
Yeah.
And that's something that's really hard. A lot of times you don't realize if you like something because of the image, quote unquote, or because of what you're actually doing. For instance, I always hated being a writer because I got satisfaction out of something that was well written, but I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't something I was like, ooh, this is so much fun that I'm writing this. No, it wasn't. It was like work, and I felt like work, and I didn't like it. It was just like work, like a job. Like I was like, like being a janitor at a junior high school, only with words instead of, a mop and a bucket, and so, yeah, but I think that everybody should be thinking about that. What is the thing that they want to do, and pursue it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough of this philosophizing. I'm yeah. So yeah, great talking to you.
Let's only hope that we have the possibility to do these things in the future, environment permitting and such.
We will. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So great talking to you, and great talking to you all. I'm going to call it a halt here because we've almost hit the 3-hour mark, and I don't want to bore you anymore. But thank you so much for attending. Tomorrow is going to be the regular weekly webinar where I'm going to be talking principally about China and some other topics that have been suggested by the webinar tier subscribers. If you're not a webinar tier subscriber, please join. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you all next time. Take it easy, guys.